If a person had the opportunity to become the beautiful, rich, and kind main character of the novel, a heroine with an ideal partner who only has eyes for her, if choosing between fantasy and reality, the lady is sure that many would choose to live in a beautiful fairy tale. And yet, this is not at all what the heroine wanted. In the novel Reach for the Stars, the story begins with the appearance of Eri, the perfect heroine who has everything. The Kingdom of Fairland was no exception on the Empire's path to its goal. The Heron Empire began an endless struggle for power over the continent, and the Kingdom of Fairland was no exception on the way to the goal. After the kingdom lost the war, their princess Arisen became a hostage of the Empire. Arisen dreamed of the days when she would inherit the throne as the queen. Despite the despair of becoming a hostage, she did not lose hope and did everything to survive. The girl did not allow the mockery of the emperor's concubines and aristocrats to influence her in any way. Eventually, the emperor saw how strong and brave the main character was and fell madly in love with her. Despite all the difficulties that stood in their way, the couple overcame everything and lived happily ever after. This is the story of the main character, but it is not her at all. The emperor's evil mistress, Lydia Odette, a villainess blinded by jealousy who mocked Eri, who was beheaded by His Majesty the Emperor himself. And our heroine, one morning, woke up in the body of the villain from this novel. She screamed that this couldn't be. She only remembers that as soon as she finished reading the book, she immediately went to bed. She thinks she smelled something burning at the time. This clearly meant that the girl died from the fire. The red-haired maiden died and woke up in the body of the heroine of that very novel, so she considered this ending simply terrible. The pale face read a novel all night. Perhaps she was just dreaming and nothing more. If the girl falls asleep again and wakes up again, she will definitely find herself in her room. But suddenly, Lydia heard someone shouting that the lady should prepare to leave for the imperial palace. Some woman screamed that she was sleeping too long and most likely went to bed late. She began to try to wash her face with a rag, asking her to sit still and why she was whining so much today. How many times had the woman already told her that she needed to wake up early to get into the carriage on time? Having pulled herself together, the redhead suddenly announced that something was definitely wrong here. But don't worry, Madame Tussauds made this dress from the highest quality fabric. But if she doesn't like it, the lady can buy a new one in the capital. By the way, the stranger heard that the noble ladies in the capital are very angry, so Lydia should be careful and not cross their path. And if the girl makes a mistake, she will be thrown out of the palace before she even sees His Majesty. From now on, she should behave decently, and she should not forget that she must do everything to attract the attention of His Majesty. The Viscountess didn't want to listen to her at all, so she really should go to the imperial palace. But the girl understood that she was not Lydia Odette at all. The blonde apologized to the writer for the wait. This girl said goodbye to her for a long time, saying that she would miss her. But the ladies will really be late if they don't hurry now. Blue-Eyed screamed that the girl must conquer His Majesty in her favorite ways, because the future of their family depended on whether Lydia became empress. The redhead couldn't believe at all that this was all real. Blue-Eyed knew nothing about her character and also had no idea what to do. But even if the lady attracts the attention of this man, it will all end with her execution. She even thought about running away as soon as the carriage doors opened. She will die if she stays in the imperial palace, so she needs to escape right now. The emperor signed a treaty that the war would end, but he would take one daughter of the lord of each territory as a concubine. After the war, he achieved peace by creating alliances through marriages. According to the plot of the novel, the emperor executed everyone who dared to contradict him, which means if the lady escapes, she will be executed for violating the peace treaty. Lydia was proclaimed the 30th concubine of the venerable emperor. The old man stated that she would live in the Lily Palace, located at the western end of the imperial palace. In addition to being famous as the god of war, Emperor Heron is famous for his collection of 30 unrivaled concubines. All concubines are ranked according to their status, with Lydia Odette, according to this system, being at the very bottom, being the daughter of a viscount. But what's the point of becoming his concubine if she won't even see him? But in that case, she should lie low. The redhead will not attract other people's attention and will live a quiet life, as if she does not exist at all. And so, the girl will be able to avoid death. Her task is to survive and live as long as she can. For these 3 years, the girl had no contact with anyone except the servants. Her hermit life was a success, and yet, today, everything will change because of this scoundrel. Having met the blonde man, Lydia apologized for the fact that she didn't know who he was. She had never seen this man before, so she asked who he was. She thought that this stranger was a new servant, saying that she had told the chamberlain that she needed a new vase, and he must have brought it. In any case, he is handsome. Before him, the girl had only met older servants. The The blue-eyed girl wanted to take the vase from him, but his hands were completely empty. The stranger suddenly smiled, because he was most likely not a servant at all. The blonde introduced himself as a servant, but does not know who she is. She introduced herself as Lydia Odette, a concubine living in Lilia Castle, and if the man didn't know her, then he was new to the place. People can't come to this castle whenever they want, but the red-eyed man only asked if it was really the lady who grew these flowers. The girl repeated that Lydia was the 30th concubine of the Majesty. That is why the new servant needs to watch her manners in her presence, because this disrespect is tantamount to disrespect for His Majesty. The girl decided to pretend that the guy had not just been rude to her. In return, he would deign to ask him for a favor, or rather, to bring a new vase that would match these flowers. Of course, the redhead can ask for provisions for the castle to be brought to her along with the orders, but she will have to wait a whole month for it to reach her. It seems that the concubine was able to get through to him. When she gets a new vase, she will put flowers in it and decorate her castle a little. The butler stated that Lydia had been invited to a ball that would take place that evening. She would meet with His Majesty, so she had to be fully prepared and under no circumstances dare to be late. The lady was surprised to receive an invitation with the imperial seal. These maids will help the lady get ready for the ball today. All 3 years she was quieter than water and lower than grass, so why did they suddenly pay such attention to her? At this ball, the main character, Eri, will meet the emperor for the first time. At this festival, the emperor will greet her, the princess of the Fairland Kingdom, as his 13th and first concubine. Maybe he called other concubines because Eri would be his first concubine after a gap of 3 years. So Lydia Odette breathed her last, and the emperor kills her according to the plot, at this very ball. This is bad. The girl gradually forgets the plot of the novel, maybe because she became Lydia. Only 3 years have passed since the moment the lady appeared in the novel, but she can no longer remember many details. Moreover, the details of such a minor villain as Lydia drove the concubine crazy. She understood that she would die today. She remembered that Eri had captured the emperor's heart at their first meeting, after which they fell in love with each other. As a result, Eri went from being a concubine to being an empress with a snap of her fingers. But the problem is that Lydia doesn't remember what she did to upset the empress and make the emperor so angry. What was Lydia like in the original story? She lost control of herself and grabbed Eri by the hair. Maybe she just happened to bump into her, that if the emperor was angry for no reason, since he started the war, then he was easily angered. Lydia is just his powerless 30th concubine. What bad could she possibly do to Eri? The maid shouted that she was very lucky. She heard that only 2 concubines were invited to the ball today. Lydia probably even met His Majesty. And he will meet him at the ball today, and this is a great honor. No one knows what the emperor looks like, so Lydia mocked Eri, not knowing that he was watching her. The girl decided to say that she was feeling unwell in order to avoid her death. Generally, the maids of the castle must visit each concubine. Some concubines give gifts to the maids because they want to make a good impression on the emperor. But she lived quietly in the farthest corner of the palace, so no one paid attention to her. There are servants who regularly bring her the necessary things. Lydia had never had maids to help her dress and clean the castle, except when she first came here 3 years ago. As a result, the redhead took care of everything in her castle on her own, including cleaning, cooking, gardening, etc. Thanks to this, the girl managed to remain in the shadows. The lady looked simply magnificent. It seemed that her servants had not tried in vain. Rumor has it that His Majesty is quite stern, but with such unrivaled beauty, the girl will definitely strike him right in the heart. Unfortunately, pretending to be sick didn't work, and she had to go to the ballroom. The emperor invited her personally, so who knows what will happen if the long-haired one doesn't come. Since the blue-eyed one was here, she had to be extremely careful. She had to avoid all men and stay away from Eri too. She should have hid in a corner of the hall and gotten out of it as soon as the ball was over. The girl didn't think she could do it. It was better to calm down before going inside. The lady thinks she will faint if she goes in right now. But can she breathe a little in the fresh air before she steps outside the door of the hall? It seems that the emperor and his future bride have not arrived yet, so the lady will take a couple of deep breaths and go in before they show up. But suddenly, the heroine met a girl who asked if everything was okay. Light pink hair like cotton candy and lake blue eyes. It must be Eri. These flowers look exactly like those the lady grows in her garden. But here they have no name and are very rare in these parts. But now is not the time to think about it. She only screamed that she did not recognize Her Majesty at all. She introduced herself as Lydia Odette, His Majesty's concubine number 30. Red had been invited to the ball tonight, so she knew Eri would come too. Her Highness, this is Princess Eri Phelan. She will be His Majesty's 31st concubine. For a moment, It seemed that the lady was looking at the girl with malice. Well, it can't be that such a high-class heroine would look with malice at a secondary concubine. Besides, in the novel, Eri was also very nice. The girl said that she would look forward to their next meeting. She was about to leave when she suddenly heard her name from her new acquaintance. She asked to get up because she thought she needed to go inside. As it turned out, the girl stepped on someone else's dress and apologized for such rudeness. As expected from a kind heroine, the lady was not angry at all. In the novel, Lydia also unexpectedly ran into Eri. Well, anyway, she's glad nothing happened. The concubine cannot gather her thoughts and enter this terrible battlefield. She's already here, which means she has no choice. She even met Eri, so it's too late to retreat. Walking down the corridor, the concubine heard a strange sound that for some reason interested her. On the floor, Lydia found the flower that was in Eri's hair, which fell when they collided. And next to her lay a glass bottle. Picking it up, the redhead thought it was some kind of medicine. It's the same delicate scent that could be felt from the princess. It must be perfume. It's better to take it and give it to her later. There was a crack in the bottle, which is why the scent from the bottle was so obvious. The girl decided to simply wrap it in her scarf to give it away later. However, this smell is really nice. She probably uses very expensive perfume because she is the main character. Now, because of the crack in the bottle, the scent became much stronger. The lady did not want to go inside. No one cares whether she will be at this ball or not, so why go? No one cares at all that Lydia is here, so why invite her at all? Maybe the emperor sent out invitations to the concubines at random, and the 30th was the loser that was chosen. If so, then she is probably the biggest loser in the whole world. Meeting her servant again, the girl apologized. He smiled because he was glad to meet again, but also asked what Lydia was doing here. By the way, this man never brought her the vase she asked him for, and what is a servant doing here anyway? The blonde man said that he came here to work. He is a servant, so probably he meets visitors here. The redhead said that she didn't have her new flower vase. He asked him to bring her one last time when he came to the castle. It seems that even the servants look down on the girl because she is a concubine of the lowest rank. It seemed that the servant remembered her request only now. Having asked to forget about it, Lydia said that she had better hurry to the ball. She was about to leave when suddenly a tall man blocked her path. Taking a vase from the table, he threw the flowers out of it onto the floor and handed it to the lady, saying that if she needed a vase for flowers, she could use this one. The redhead suddenly stated that this vase belonged to the imperial palace, and because of this, they could get into trouble. The blonde said it so calmly that it even sounded convincing, and yet, Lydia cannot take away what belongs to the imperial palace. The blue-eyed girl thanked the servant and said that she would go now, and he could return to work. He again did not let the girl leave, grabbing her by the wrist. The man came too close, and the concubine did not understand why he was suddenly behaving like this. She immediately asked, in a voice that sounded more like a frightened cry, why the servant had come so close. This guy knows that the girl is the emperor's concubine, but for some reason he does this. Lydia thought he was really crazy and was sure she would only get into trouble if she stayed with him now. Therefore, it would be better for her to finish this strange conversation with him and leave. But suddenly, the red-eyed man said that the lady smelled delicious. He asked what that scent was because it came from the girl. The blonde was curious about what perfume the blue-eyed stranger was using. Those red eyes, filled with desire, looked as if their owner would eat the victim alive if they didn't respond. The redhead replied that she was not sure about this perfume because the maids helped her prepare for the ball. But why shouldn't he ask them if he was so interested? It didn't matter, because the pale-faced woman refused to communicate with this abnormal person. Deciding that she should leave here as soon as possible, the sound of fanfares was heard. The girl heard that the emperor's procession took a long time, so everything would be fine if she entered the hall before the music ended, and no one would look for her, but there would be a fuss if the invited concubine did not show up to the ball on time. Entering the hall where the ball was to take place, the lady did not see Eri's presence. Seeing her, Lydia noticed that next to her was another concubine who had been invited to the ball. His Majesty is here. He is welcomed, because it is an honor for everyone to be present at this ball. Everyone praised the emperor because he was the main character of this novel. The main character is truly beautiful. It was interesting to see what the main character would be like. The girl was sure that he was as beautiful as a statue. His Majesty was wearing a veil, to be honest. The heroine did not remember the author mentioning any details about his appearance. Nothing like hair or eye color, and even when we first met, he wasn't wearing a veil. Greeting the emperor one by one is a long-standing tradition for aristocrats and concubines, but not all aristocrats and concubines can afford to do so. Only the aristocrats and concubines of high society, chosen by the emperor, can give him the traditional greeting. And if the lady's memory serves her right, Only Eri greeted the emperor among all the concubines at the ball. At that very moment, the cold-blooded emperor falls in love with her at first sight. The concubine greeted his majesty, considering it an honor to carry out this tradition for the first time. The heroine promised to serve faithfully and truly, being a concubine, so as not to defile the reputation of her country. His Majesty has arranged this ball to welcome his new concubine and celebrate his recent victory, and it seems that the king is particularly interested in her. Lydia watched the plot unfold, and it was time for the most important part. Only concubines are allowed to do this. As a sign of trust and loyalty to her husband and the emperor, the concubine kisses his right shoulder. It was then that sparks arose between Eri and the emperor, precisely at this point in the novel. But for some reason, nothing happened. The one who came to this world thought that he would fall in love with her at first sight and immediately make her a candidate for the role of empress. But in an instant, one of the butlers of the imperial palace declared that Lydia Odette should go and greet the emperor. The girl was sure that nothing bad would happen. He was probably just interested in how his lowest-ranking concubine was doing. It was like a mockery. Lydia felt how the hours of her life were shortening while she stood right in front of his majesty. It was worth finishing the greeting quickly, and quickly going down. But suddenly, she accidentally pulled off the veil, which caused her to see the emperor's face. She only asked for forgiveness, and was told that now she could go down, and if she stayed there any longer, it would be considered rude. Everyone looked at the red-haired concubine, discussing only her. I was too ashamed. Well, what can you expect from her? She comes from a low background, and she's not very educated. Leaving the hall, she was ready to cry, no longer from humiliation, but from the fact that the emperor had not killed her. The lady was so tired that she would like to return to her castle as soon as possible and rest. Around the corner stood a high-ranking, red-haired concubine who couldn't understand how the 30th concubine dared to do such impudence. Eri is the star of the ball tonight, and the emperor no longer calls Lydia, so most of the guests ignore her. But still, not a single person approached the concubine. Red hid in the shadows to survive, but being alone for 3 years wasn't easy. But stop feeling sorry for yourself. It would be better to get some fresh air. If the girl stays here, she will definitely do something that will anger the emperor and Eri. There must be a back exit around here somewhere that the servants use. Having found it, the girl wondered whether this door led to the street. Opening it, Lydia began to scream because she dropped the candle, and after waking up in the body of this heroine, she began to be afraid of fire. Maybe how she died in her past life caused her trauma in the current one. In an instant, another concubine got ahead of the lady, asking where she was going in such a hurry. This was the third concubine. But what was she doing here? Was she really pursuing the heroine? The stranger stated that the blue-eyed one was only the 30th concubine, and how could she have received an invitation to the ball when she herself had barely obtained it? She thought that the beggar had appeased the chancellor or the minister of defense. The woman grabbed Lydia by the hair and started fighting, trying to find out how she got the invitation. She stated that the girl simply had to sit quietly in her castle, as she had been doing before, and she was trying to charm his majesty. Throwing the girl to the floor, shouting that the concubine was worried about the appearance of the 31st concubine. The first and second concubines had already gotten on the red-haired girl's nerves, and she had no intention of tolerating a lady, a brat who didn't know her place, because Lydia could continue to sit quietly in the farthest corner of the imperial palace. But all the concubines that this bully caught said the same thing. The woman said that Odette should disappear from the ball, because she no longer had the patience to tolerate such behavior. She called her assistant or friend to decide what they would do. Perhaps they will cut off her arms or legs, or perhaps she will fall into eternal sleep. After all, no one will be interested in a concubine if she becomes a real cripple. But still, the jealous one will have problems for insulting other concubines. Lydia may only be the 30th concubine, but they are in the Castle of the Sun, where His Majesty lives. Ted and his lady just laughed, because they thought that the girl was not in a position to worry about this now. As if on command, the tall assistant of this impudent concubine began to slowly approach the heroine. The redhead immediately screamed loudly for the man to immediately step back. The blue-eyed girl was so happy that the emperor did not kill her, but was her death really destined for her by fate? The girl has lived so long that she simply cannot die here like this. But suddenly, Ted took out a torch, and from the fire, Lydia began to fall into a real panic. Is this really how the secondary villain of this novel will die? The lady didn't even try to seduce the emperor. If she had known that she would die like this, she would have at least tried. But suddenly, both of these villains found themselves on the floor, completely unconscious. Someone clearly attacked them, namely that same tall blonde man. The girl thanked her servant for saving her. The man said that she should be careful, because concubines can sometimes be too cruel. But what if something like this happens again? The girl doesn't even have security, so she won't be able to protect herself. Lydia even thought about asking this guy to help her. The blonde asked the girl to let him into the castle when he came to her again. This was a very strange request for Lydia, which surprised her. The man noticed that people were coming here because of the noise, so the servant will leave, but the lady should also leave quickly. It so happened that this man simply jumped from the balcony. The concubine ran away from the emperor and ran into new troubles. Couldn't the events of a novel develop more slowly for someone who had just become its hero? The girl instantly decided that it would be better for her to leave here too. But 30 must have twisted her ankle when she collided with Eri. She already understood that someone had come to the noise. But as soon as that servant had disappeared, they had already appeared here. The guards and the butler asked what Lady Lydia was doing there. The old man asked what had happened here, and who the gentleman was lying on the floor next to Lady Caroline. He was even afraid that Lady Odette could hurt Lady Caroline. The butler asked the girl to go with him for now to clarify the circumstances. Lydia was the prime suspect here. She said she didn't do anything. This hall is used only by servants and His Majesty's concubine, so she has nothing to do here. The blue-eyed girl wondered what she could say to the chief chamberlain. Suddenly, a little boy cried out that Lady Lydia was completely innocent because he was a servant of the sunroom. He walked through this hall to get to the garden and saw a girl. It seemed that she was also going to the garden, like him. But suddenly, Lady Caroline appeared and began to quarrel with her. She and the servant lying next to her wanted to attack the concubine. The boy couldn't look at this, so he closed his eyes and covered his ears with his hands. But a few minutes later, instead of Lady Lydia's scream, he heard Lady Caroline's scream. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lady Lydia standing between Caroline and her servant, who lay unconscious. The child swore that it was true, and the girl was simply defending herself. One of the guards said that he believed that the boy was not lying. They confirmed that the man lying next to the lady is her servant. The master ordered that this servant be tied up, and that Lady Caroline also be detained, and then Lydia and this boy were taken to another room. After that, the situation was resolved quite easily when the red-haired girl and her servant woke up. They were interrogated, and they finally admitted that they tried to hurt the heroine. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl was resting in one of the rooms of the sunny castle together with the servant who gave the testimony. One of the maids reported that the carriage that would take the lady to Lilia's castle was already waiting for her. Having met that same servant, the girl asked if this was the boy who protected her. She said that she was very glad that this misunderstanding was resolved, and it was all thanks to him. He was probably very scared too, so she wanted to say thank you for having the courage to tell her everything. The green-eyed man felt sorry that he couldn't stand up for the girl right away to help her, so he asked her to be careful on the way to Lily's castle. The butler asked Lydia for forgiveness for what happened today. The old man was sure that this incident had greatly frightened the red-haired concubine. His Majesty would be very strict in punishing them, so there was no need to even worry about it. The lady hoped that this incident would not cause rumors. The girl did not want to attract even more attention to herself. During the ball at the Castle of the Sun, the third concubine, blinded by jealousy, tried to kill the 30th. However, Miss Lydia laid down the third concubine's huge servant with her bare hands, and the concubine herself was kicked out of the imperial palace because of the uproar that arose. These rumors spread throughout the imperial palace from early morning, but the girl herself understood perfectly well that it was not she who caused their loss of consciousness. To begin with, she wanted to thank her servant, because thanks to him, she remained safe and sound. The lady wanted to let her introduce herself again, reminding him that the girl was the emperor's 30th concubine. The boy's name was Mar, so the concubine asked if she could just call him by his name. But suddenly, the girl found out that the blonde guy doesn't work anywhere and is generally listed as a fugitive. During the war, he was taken hostage and was supposed to become the emperor's servant, but he escaped because he did not want to serve him at all. Therefore, the man asked to be allowed to stay in Lilia Castle to pretend that he had escaped from the capital so that the girl would not get into trouble. Mar planned to wait until His Majesty went to war again to leave safely. The plan may be real. No one will come to the stranger's castle except the servants who deliver things to the girl every month. But if the guy is discovered, the lady will be executed for treason. The servant suddenly offered a compromise. He would become the redhead's personal bodyguard, and she, in return, would allow him to hide in her castle. The girl was going to ask Mara for help anyway. Even if she tried her best not to attract attention to herself, she would not be able to do anything with those who would independently involve her in conflicts. Still, it was too risky, but the blonde continued to beg the emperor's concubine. But if a man becomes her bodyguard, then he will have to follow her orders. It is clear that he is from an honorable family. It will be strange if a low-ranking concubine like her commands him. It will be inhumane. But Mar was not at all against following the concubine's orders. The blonde promised that he would be obedient, so he could stay with the redhead. In that case, maybe everything will work out. The lady really does need protection, and he saved her life. The girl asked if the man would really do everything she said. In that case, she would like to show the guest her castle. It has a lot of empty rooms that he can use. His Majesty the Emperor was greeted by a veiled man. The man smiled and ordered him to remove his veil, but he was so carried away by the latest events that he forgot about it. This man was James Genovia, the Emperor's only servant, who replaced him at ceremonies. The man ordered him to get down on one knee and ordered him to tell everything. He narrated that his homeland was destroyed by the Heron Empire. He used to be the prince of the Genovia kingdom. Unlike the rest of the royal family, the man resisted the empire until the very end. But Emperor Heron appreciated his courage and took him as a hostage. The prince was offered something he couldn't refuse, to play the role of a double until the Heron Empire took over the entire continent. If the man succeeds in his task, the emperor will make a special exception for him and return him to the kingdom. It's been 8 years since the double agreed to serve the emperor. Some would say he's licking the boots of his kingdom's enemy. But even if Marquis Heron is a vicious and ruthless warmonger, a murderer, so can the green-eyed one lick his boots as much as he wants for the good of his country. Princess Airy had a slight scent of asters. If the dark-haired man hadn't prepared an antidote in advance, there might have been problems. An unusual flower, but its aroma can be very useful. This plant is very poisonous. It makes a person lose his mind. A high concentration of the aroma of aster extract can cloud a person's mind, forcing him to obey even his sworn enemy. Countless soldiers died in the war against Fairland because of the scent of these flowers. But the scent was not strong enough to condemn her for treason. The man thought that she would use the highly concentrated perfume to harm his highness. But still, you shouldn't take your eyes off her. It's only a matter of time before those idiots, the rebels, organize a rebellion while their princess is held hostage by the Empire. If she uses highly concentrated aster extract, then she must be accused of treason and dealt with on the spot. The emperor was also informed that there was something related to the 30th concubine. The double wanted to know why the emperor invited her to the ball. Although very distant, the aroma of asters could be felt from her too. It seems she has prepared a dangerous poison within the confines of the imperial palace. The blonde said that this was enough, and there was no point in bringing up the topic any further. It was suspicious. The girl didn't look like she was hiding the presence of flowers, and her hands were too gentle for the hands of a killer. Besides, the smell of asters was too weak, despite the fact that she grows them in large quantities, which means the lady definitely has no idea about their use. The emperor tried many times to grow these flowers on his own, but in vain. And how fortunate it was that there was someone in the palace who knew how to grow them. If a man uses it correctly, he will be able to achieve his goal. His Majesty declared that this was none of his assistant's business and ordered him to ignore it and to do his job. The blonde will leave the imperial palace for a short time, asking the man to carry out the plan until he returns. Lydia informed her servant that she had prepared breakfast and collected everything necessary for the picnic, so she decided to invite him to eat with her. The girl was sure that the man was very hungry and didn't even want to listen to him. But suddenly, the blonde asked what the redhead was sitting on. What she had spread on the ground was an army blanket, the kind soldiers use when they sit on the ground, and anyone would know from the pattern that it was a regular picnic blanket. And what's more, she had taken all that food and a picnic basket with her. Maybe he has some kind of trauma related to this, and he remembers the war when he sees ordinary things. The lady handed the servant a sandwich, telling him that she had put cheese in it. After eating, the man said that it was quite tasty. The girl began to boast that she was very good at making sandwiches. He asked where Lydia's maids were and why she cooked her own food. She shared that she felt uncomfortable in their presence, so she sent them back. It often happens that low-ranking concubines do not have maids, but Lydia is the only concubine in the entire palace who does not even have servants to cook and clean. So there is nothing surprising in the blonde's reaction. Lydia is much more comfortable doing everything herself, so you shouldn't pay attention. In any case, the man had never cooked or even made sandwiches like these. The redhead decided to teach the man to cook. If they live together, then she will have to cook twice as much. It will be unfair if the girl cooks everything herself. They all started somewhere. To be honest, the lady is not a very good cook either. She only makes simple dishes. And the blonde guy probably fried meat on the fire when he was at war. Cooking is roughly similar to this process. But if he is afraid of blood and knives, then the concubine can understand why he has a hard time cooking. People returning from the battlefield may be injured. The servant proudly declared that the only thing he was sure of was his ability to handle knives. This was good because Lydia is not very good at cutting meat or fish, so she always has to ask the cook for help. The girl said that she would teach the guy how to cook, and he could teach her how to cut meat. When the servant leaves Lily's castle, he will need to be able to cook, and now a good opportunity has appeared. It was worth sorting out breakfast first. There were just 2 last sandwiches left, but the lady brought a bunch of fresh blueberries. A couple of days ago, the flowers were white when they bloomed. That's why now, for some reason, they've all withered, but they were blooming the day before yesterday. I wondered what happened to them. The man even scared the girl, and she asked what surprised him so much. Mar was sure that the lady had put a lot of effort into growing these flowers. But there was no need to worry, because this was all part of their flowering process. In fact, they had not withered at all. A few days after flowering, these flowers take on a similar appearance. Normally, they would have bloomed for another 3 days, but they must have bloomed earlier than usual because of today. They are very dependent on weather conditions and quite sensitive in general. The lady first discovered the star flower when she was sorting through the provisions that had come to her several months ago. Apparently, her things were mixed up with the things of another concubine, and this flower accidentally came into her possession. It immediately attracted her attention. The girl felt lonely, so she was glad that she had something that she could surround with care and love. She called this mysterious flower a star flower and did everything necessary, taking care of it. But despite the fact that the concubine devoted a lot of time to him and often talked to him, less than a week passed before the flower withered. Usually, people throw away wilted flowers, but she became very attached to this plant, so she buried it in the sunlight. After that, she constantly came to that place and talked to the flower as before. And 2 days later, the flower, by some amazing miracle, blossomed again. Moreover, it became bigger and more beautiful than before. The lady repeated the process several times and learned to grow star flowers. The most interesting fact was that the flower did not die when it seemed that it would never bloom again. When in full bloom, they become very sensitive, but in addition to this, they also recover quickly. If you bury them in the ground immediately after they finish blooming and talk to them every day, they will bloom again as if nothing had happened. Using this method, the girl grew a whole small flower garden from this star flower. There seems to be a limit to the number of star flowers that can be grown, but the fact that these beautiful flowers exist brings her boundless joy. And while the concubine was growing them, she began to dream about how she would leave the imperial palace and open her own flower shop. The only downside is the dim aroma of these flowers, but they look great, so the girl is sure that they will be popular. The only thing that confused her was that she couldn't find information about them in any book about plants. Had they really been discovered only recently, or were they some kind of mutated breed of plants that the academic world had yet to learn about? Or maybe no one could grow them because no one knew how, so who would even think of such a strange growing process? But the flowers that adorned Aries' hair were very similar to her star flowers. Maybe they were special flowers that only grew in Fairland. Aerie will soon become empress, so she is unlikely to be interested in selling star flowers. When Aerie and the emperor fall in love, no one will notice that the 30th concubine is missing. Maybe she will be able to escape from the castle, open a flower shop, and live the life she wants. The blonde promised to bury flowers for the girl. She shared her breakfast with him, so this is the least he can do for her. In the end, the lady told Maru everything about how to grow them. He offered to help the lady, so she felt ashamed that she shared the secret with him only for self-interest. Besides, he is not going to sell the flowers, and she knows exactly how many flowers she has growing, so the girl will immediately notice if he steals at least one of them. From now on, they would live together, and she would not be able to hide all this from him anyway. The lady would handle the rest of the work herself. The blonde said that if the lady taught him how to grow these flowers, he would do everything. The man did not want to just sit on the sidelines and watch, so he would like to help. The concubine didn't know that talking to someone could be so fun. She can't believe that her quiet and boring life has now become so colorful with the appearance of a new interlocutor. Lydia thought she could escape the plot lines of the novel and live a happy life, but she ended up getting caught up in the plot twists again. The main character said that her country has the most popular tea. She is glad that she managed to bring it with her to the empire. She wanted to treat someone with it, so she brewed tea especially for the 30th concubine. The girl thanked the guest for the invitation to tea, but decided to ask what she had done to deserve such an honor. The lady revealed that she simply wanted to have tea with Lydia, asking her to simply be called Lady Aerie. After all, she was now officially a concubine of the Heron Empire. Aerie also said that the red-haired one was the only concubine she knew, so she wanted to meet her and chat when she started living in the imperial palace. That day, among the emperor's concubines, only Lydia and Caroline were at the ball, but that same night the red-haired one was kicked out of the castle. According to the novel, the emperor was supposed to fall in love with Aerie, But Aries' rank still hasn't changed, and it doesn't seem like the Emperor is going to do anything about it. Maybe the plot of the novel has changed, but this can't be. They talk about the love of two main characters. The concubine must have forgotten some details after all. She was busy surviving for the past 3 years. It's good that the girl still remembers the main plot. Since Aerie is interested in the lady, it's better to win her over. The Emperor will fall in love with her, so she should befriend her no matter what. She will become her friend and get out of this palace alive when the right opportunity arises. The redhead reported that her new friend dropped a bottle of perfume when they ran into each other on the terrace, and she saved it to give to the owner. The concubine had already forgotten how strong the smell of this perfume was. When the 30th took the bottle, the aroma filled the entire hall. She was ready to bet that she got a couple of points in the girl's favor thanks to this perfume. The pink-haired girl kept thinking about where she could have lost them. Lydia apologized for taking so long to return them. The bottle was slightly cracked, so some of the perfume spilled on her hand, but she wrapped it in a handkerchief and saved the rest. The lady did not understand why the concubine was reacting like that, so she asked what happened. The lady suddenly asked what the girl knew about this perfume and who had sent this girl. Lydia got scared and decided to tell the truth, saying that she knew nothing about this perfume. The redhead said that Aerie left it on the floor, so she must have accidentally stepped on the bottle and broken it. The girl even agreed to take responsibility for it, if only she would be forgiven. Now that Aerie is angry, there is no point in dreaming about friendship. Blue-Eyed asked only one question, whether anyone else knew about this perfume, to which she received a negative answer. Because this perfume was important to the pink-haired girl, she decided to save it to return it to her, but she didn't tell anyone about it. Apparently, the concubine misunderstood Lady Lydia, so she decided to ask for forgiveness, and also considered it necessary to thank the lady for returning her thing. This perfume was really important to her. She didn't know what she would have done if Lydia hadn't found it. What was much more important was that the concubine returned him to Her Majesty. That's why the girl asked to be called simply Aerie from now on. The lady was a nobody, but her parents made sure that she became the Emperor's concubine, while Aerie was the only heir to the royal family of Fairland before she became the Emperor's concubine. They were born in different circumstances, but there is one thing that unites them. No one in the Heron Empire takes their side, and they have to survive in the palace on their own. Maybe that's why the lady likes to communicate with the 31st concubine. She told her about the political situation on the continent and in the empire, so that she could understand everything. Through this conversation, she discovered that Aerie was not only comfortable to talk to, she was also an excellent speaker, and she had enough drive and strength to rule the country. Lydia couldn't believe that this lady had become the 31st concubine and would soon become the Empress. Of course, she would achieve her goal when she became the Empress and took back her kingdom. But still, it would be great if Aerie just became the Queen of Fairland. It was a relief, because the concubine thought she would die at the hands of the Emperor after losing the perfume of the asters. But thanks to Lydia, no one knew of its existence. Pink didn't even want to imagine what would have happened if one of the Emperor's assistants had found him. More importantly, the scent of asters must have reached Lady Lydia that day. The Emperor is not an idiot, and the lady doubts that he did not notice this. If he found out that the faint scent was from highly concentrated poison, he would secretly kill both her and Lady Lydia. It would be worth using the remaining perfume and taking over the Emperor's mind for the good of her kingdom, but the lady does not want to endanger Lady Lydia. It looks like the girl will have to get rid of her perfume after all, and it's better to find another way to charm the Emperor. The war with the Arcade Empire was one of the most brutal, but it ended with a resounding victory for Heron, and the man who led the troops and killed the commander of the Arcade army was none other than Marquis Heron. The commander receives important information, and the boy takes him to him. The man begged to be made commander of the army, but he could not lay a finger on the enemy commander and lies dying. It was not necessary. He had to return to the imperial palace and inform His Majesty of the victory. It was also worth telling the commander not to think about returning to the empire until he blew out all the guts of the remaining enemies. Suddenly a thought came to her. Commander Arcade had green eyes, full of life, but they turned dark red, filled with blood when he was wounded in the very heart. So, if the Emperor's eyes are red, then they indicate that the man is a living corpse. A man can kill people over and over again without feeling anything because he is a living corpse. The Arcade Empire was an impregnable fortress, but they captured and destroyed it. The blonde personally killed Commander Arcade without any help from others, so he wanted to ask to accept him as his son. The old man said that the Emperor was indeed difficult to kill, and he asked how else this demon was going to live. Did the boy really think that everything would change if he succeeded in the war? Did he think that his father would recognize him as the crown prince when he didn't even have his blood in him? The man ordered the blonde to stop defiling the imperial family and simply pass away. He is a great emperor, and his stepson is simply the empress's shameful secret. The emperor is no better than a bloodthirsty demon. Just look at his ugly red eyes. If someone sees these damned eyes, it will be bad. The empress suffered from illness. The marquis believed that she was the one who would bear him an heir, and she had silver hair. But the emperor had neither silver hair nor red eyes. Besides that, the biggest problem was the marquis's dissimilarity to either the emperor or the empress. He was taller and had a handsome appearance, and the emperor was not at all a master of the sword. But the marquis managed to learn fencing at an early age, and it took the emperor 15 years to raise an heir. But deep down, he began to suspect the marquis. His son looked nothing like him, and his only resemblance to his wife was his silver hair. The truth was soon revealed. The empress was afraid that she would fall into the emperor's disfavor if she could not give birth to an heir. So she faked a pregnancy and took her younger sister's son. The blonde said that he must return to the battlefield and wipe Arcade's people off the face of the earth. It was an excellent decision, because the marquis believed that it would be even better if he died with them. The man simply did not understand what he had done wrong this time. Maybe he should have killed the commander faster, then his father would have been happy. Or is it all just because he has red eyes? They made the guy a bloodthirsty monster, so His Majesty even wondered whether it was worth just cutting them out. Even he gets scared when the blonde sees himself in the mirror. Those eyes reminded him of death. The veil that the emperor wore choked him, but he couldn't take it off because of the emperor. This was the only way a man could hide the shameful secret of the imperial family. The father wanted his son to die on the battlefield, but he did not want this. He decided to kill all his enemies, just to survive. The blonde swore that he would fight on the battlefield until his father acknowledged him. The end of the Continental War was near. When they won the war against the Daeon Empire, his father told him to get out. His Majesty slapped his son on the cheek because he did not want to see his demonic eyes. He felt the heat coming from his palm as he hit him in the face, but the man didn't feel any pain. There wasn't even any sadness in his heart. In fact, His Majesty felt nothing at all. Only the warmth of his hand when he first touched the red-eyed demon. Red thought that Mar was sick because he seemed to have a fever. The girl asked him if he had slept well, which scared him, which she didn't understand, so she simply asked him to let go of her hand. Then the servant realized that he had not felt the warmth of her hand in a dream. It was simply her palm. The concubine asked the emperor to come to her because she had something for him. She said that the guy cleaned Lilia's castle yesterday and helped her with many things, so the girl prepared a gift for him. The lady handed him a warm vest and was sure that he was amazed by such a nice gift. She knitted this vest herself, asking the recipient if he liked it. It looked flimsy, but still, since Maru liked it, the concubine asked to try it on. The blonde didn't want to wear it because the quality of the knitting was disgusting. For a second, the redhead even thought that he wasn't wearing her gift because he didn't like it. Since he didn't like anything, the lady decided to prepare another gift for him. The girl even apologized because she didn't think that the guy might not like it. He whispered that he liked everything, to which the girl happily asked if he would wear it. It was impudent of her because she leaves the emperor no choice but to wear it. It was warm and soft, and not as uncomfortable as the servant thought, although the yellow color didn't suit the blonde at all. The concubine was very strange, because she even talked to flowers. Although these flowers may appear to be wilted, one must trust that they will bloom again soon. The man asked how the lady could possibly be sure of them, to which Lydia replied that being sure of something was not a necessary condition. All they can do is give them their love and hope for the best. And this is not only true for starflowers, the same applies to people. The reason why Lydia talks to the starflowers is because she will always believe in them as their protector. But how can you believe in someone if they can't be sure of their success? How can this girl wish someone happiness without getting anything in return? The man even thought that she was an angel from the Bible. But in that case, would it apply to those who killed people? Would the lady say the same words to a demon like Mar? But it didn't matter, because the concubine would never say such a thing. He would be surprised if she didn't faint upon hearing such a thing. The emperor understood that this vest looked very shabby, but when the lady was knitting, she did not notice it. But it all happened because she's still just trying to learn to knit. The girl will knit a new one for the servant when she receives the yarn along with the rest of the supplies. The blonde was surprised because the concubine should receive money from the budget allocated for all concubines. The girl can buy yarn with the money she has left. Why wait until the next delivery arrives? The servant even thought that the budget was too small, and that was why the concubine was suffering. But that was not the point. As a concubine of the lowest class in the palace, she set herself the goal of living a quiet life without causing trouble for anyone, so she deliberately spends less money from the budget than the other concubines and leads a reclusive lifestyle. In addition, She did not buy anything additional to what the palace already provides her. Besides, this is not the main problem, because the nearest castles located near the Lily Castle are the Tulip Castle and the Rose Castle. The redhead had gotten into trouble with the Rose Castle a few days ago. She heard that the 7th concubine living in that castle was very fond of birds and kept several as pets. These birds have taken to flying to Lily's castle, where the 30th concubine lives, and she is afraid that they will eat all her starflowers. Lydia wanted to file a complaint, but as she said earlier, she doesn't want to attract attention to herself. She's already become famous enough because of the incident at the ball. The girl got angry and said that the emperor was to blame for everything, not even realizing that he was sitting opposite her. If he hadn't taken so many concubines, the lady wouldn't have to worry about this. The lady understood that these marriages were part of his peace treaty, but it was still strange. But it was the easiest way to get an agreement peacefully. These families desperately want to make their daughters empresses, which cannot particularly resist His Majesty. If the emperor liked women so much, he should have taken 2 or 3 concubines for himself. Lydia doubted that he even remembered the faces of all his ladies, even laughable from the size of his greed. But he had 31 concubines, not because he was crazy about women. The concubine was ready to bet that this man was a cheater, chasing after every skirt. She did not want people like him to even look in her direction. In fact, the man only encountered hired killers and soldiers on the battlefield when it came to girls, and even so, he still managed to become a cheater and a womanizer. After the lady had spoken out, it was as if a weight had been lifted from her chest, and she felt much better. After listening to this, the demon decided to take a walk in the fresh air. After leaving the room, the emperor simply could not understand why he was so upset. Red-Eyed tried to understand what he was feeling now. These feelings did not look like irritation or anger. The emperor was looking at a document with a report on the concubine's budget. The man recalled the words of the 30th concubine, that there were too many of them, and he did not even remember the faces of his concubines. He decided that if it was bothering Lydia so much, he would just get rid of a few of them. He wrote a letter to the Raleigh family, stating that they had served the previous emperor faithfully and had considerable power. Count Raleigh was always waiting for the right moment to make his daughter empress. But his daughter committed an attack, and he himself is prone to evil deeds. The man postponed their punishment because he was waiting for the opportunity to condemn them for all their sins at once. But it is better not to postpone anything. Apparently, the 7th concubine has used the budget funds she spends on dresses several times to keep 30 birds and pay for all their needs. Of course, this amount is only a small part of the imperial family's budget, but there is no reason to allow her to keep 30 expensive birds that she cannot keep track of. Now, Lydia will not say that the emperor is to blame for everything. Mar decided to see how much money Lydia was asking for her budget. Other concubines use millions of gold just to maintain the dignity of their castle, but Lydia lives on half the amount that others spend on food alone. That's why her castle looks so ordinary. Regardless, she had to maintain her dignity as a concubine of the empire. It would be problematic if she tarnished the reputation of the imperial palace with her small budget. Looking at the expenses of the last concubine, the man did not understand whether she even thought when she asked him for such money. She decided to use all possible money from the imperial budget, because Heron is the sworn enemy of her country. One of the knights said that he urgently needed to look at something, so he left in a hurry without warning His Majesty. The guy received an urgent letter about suspicious activity in Fairland. Princess Airy is an important figure for the inhabitants of this kingdom. Moreover, it is worth taking her side to easily suppress the rebellion of its inhabitants. And all because Airy is the only heir to the kingdom. This meant that she knew the secret behind the Asters. They could gain a lot by winning her trust, so the knight was going to act. Sometimes the emperor didn't like the way his assistant looked at him, but he had never betrayed his emperor. And the blonde needs someone to keep an eye on Airy, so he has no reason to refuse. Although he was unsure what would happen when the two met. But in order to achieve victory, His Majesty should look at the general state of affairs. The dark-haired one will take care of everything, so there is no need to worry. From the outside, he looks like a devoted servant, but in reality he crosses the line. However, the red-eyed one wanted to end the protracted war by any means and conquer the continent. This goal became his obsession and bound him with sharp ash. But this vine can become his saving amnesty. As long as he can achieve his goal, he does not care about the loss of strength and power. The man decided to give his consent to the servant, but he should not forget to report every detail to him. The blonde was absent from Lilia's castle longer than expected, but suddenly he remembered that the girl had asked him to check her flowers. Lydia asked him to see how the flowers were doing. He hoped that the birds of the Rose Castle had not destroyed the garden while he was away. The man looked at the ground and saw sprouts. He concluded that the asters had indeed sprouted. The man hired the best gardeners in the empire to grow these flowers, but they all withered and died without ever sprouting. Red-Eyed couldn't figure out whether it was her genius or just her usual luck. But after the emperor heard about the actions of the people of Fairland, he realized that while he had been idle for several weeks, Lydia Odette had interested him. Therefore, he no longer needs to spend his time with her. First of all, Mar started contacting her because of the flowers, so now he needs to find out all the secrets that the asters hide. And ignore everything else. Throw off his good mask if his goal requires it. Even if the lady tries to poison the emperor again, the man will not attach any importance to it. Red saw Mara through the window, asking where he had been all this time, because she had been looking for him everywhere. Seeing her, the blonde man blushed. It was strange, because such a reaction was only to alcohol. He couldn't understand why Lydia made his heart beat faster. But the concubine concluded from this that her servant felt ashamed because he doubted her when he saw the sprouts. So he stands silently, trying not to look her in the eyes. The redhead had no idea that the emperor could look so cute. She wanted to tell him more about the asters, but leaned over, thinking that the guy could not hear her, and, miscalculating her capabilities, the girl flew down from the balcony. Finding his beloved falling down, the man rushed towards her, managing to catch her in his arms. Maybe it was too much of a shock for Mara, or maybe he was very embarrassed by the fact that he caught Lydia. Since that incident, he did not let the lady out of his sight, but he did not communicate with her at all. The redhead understands that the man is worried and very embarrassed, but she is disgusted by this strange atmosphere. At this rate, the girl will lose the only friend she managed to find here, and she doesn't want that at all. But suddenly, the girl had a perfect idea, so she decided to have a picnic. The concubine asked if the man was taken by surprise by her beauty, but even if so, he should not fall in love with her. The blonde simply noticed that the lady had been wearing black dresses a lot lately, asking her if she really didn't have any other clothes. The girl said that although she has a modest life, she has other dresses. Maybe they are the same color, but completely different. Lydia has attracted a lot of attention in the palace lately. That's why she wears black dresses, so as not to stand out too much. People will not see someone who wears such things as an imperial concubine. But everything was fine. Where they were going, it would be beautiful and fresh. Arriving at the place, the redhead said that the water in this pond was crystal clear. The girl did not understand how much longer she had to endure such behavior from the emperor, because he still did not answer her. The lady decided to ask directly how long the servant was going to behave so rudely. The concubine couldn't understand why he was embarrassed after he held her in his arms. What happened was a coincidence, and apparently he was not used to such closeness with other people. Even so, is the blonde not going to talk to Lydia anymore? The redhead asked to just relax with her once. The water in this pond gives off a pleasant coolness when you put your feet in it. The concubine promised that the man would have a great time. The girl almost fell into the lake again, but her servant grabbed her hand and did not want to let go. But when Mar decided to let the lady go, he accidentally threw her into the lake, dirtying his clothes. Lydia just wanted to relax with him. Lately, he has been avoiding her, keeping his distance from her and not talking at all. So she decided that it was worthwhile to rest with him by the pond to relieve the tension that had arisen between them. And the way he reacted made the concubine think that they were something more than just a mistress and her servant. In this castle, the 30th concubine was alone, and Mar ran away from the emperor. They were both on their own, so she decided that they could become friends and become closer to each other. But Mar didn't think so at all. It seemed that the blonde saw the girl only as a neighbor, whom he would leave as soon as the right moment came. The redhead only asked the emperor for forgiveness for disturbing him. It was Lydia who decided that they had become friends and staged this performance. But she couldn't understand why Mar was upset. She was trying to drive him into the pond against his will. But the girl really thought that she and her servant had become very close. She'll be very lucky if she doesn't end up dying like Lydia from the original story, who couldn't believe she was crying because she had no friends. Maybe the lady should just forget about her dream of leaving this castle and getting rich selling starflowers. If she was so upset that she couldn't find a friend, she didn't want to know how upset the girl would be if she couldn't make her dream come true. The redhead decided not to dream about anything, think about doing something, or try to become happy. You just have to live the rest of your life like someone else's doll. The man walked to the girl's bedroom to bring her a towel. He hastened to apologize because he felt guilty before the lady. He explained that he had not let go of her hand on purpose and had not thought that she was bothering him. He had simply been scared. It looks like this guy was held by the hand for the first time. The concubine said that, to tell the truth, this was also the first time this had happened to her. It was the first time she had ever held someone's hand. But does this mean that she became his first friend? She apologized too because she just wanted him to know that she was genuinely glad that she met the servant, so they should become good friends after this moment. Today is the best day of her 3 years as Lydia Odette. The lady is completely sure of this, and all because now she is no longer alone. The redhead asked what Mar was doing here. Mar prepared tea for his mistress himself and offered her to drink. He is very good at making tea, so the girl asked him how he did it, but it just happened naturally. The man must have a talent for cooking, so she even envies him. She was afraid of fire, so it is hard for her to improve her cooking skills. Perhaps it would be worth asking them to bring the lady some cooking books along with the next supply. The concubine was going to read about how to get rich quickly by selling flowers and how to brilliantly run your own business. She dreamed of opening her own flower shop after escaping from the imperial palace, so she wanted to prepare for everything in advance. But the blonde was surprised by the fact that Lydia wanted to leave the imperial palace. The redhead said that she didn't want to stay here until she was old. She was going to escape from this place and live a good life. Mar must have been surprised by her ambitious plan. It was charming. By the time the girl left the castle, he would have already calmly escaped and settled down somewhere. The girl hoped that they would be able to communicate as friends until that moment. It would be great if Mar supported Lydia, to which he said that it was a wonderful dream, and he was sure that he could make it come true. But to this, the emperor only stated that it would be better for the concubine to surrender. His Majesty had said that she shouldn't hope to sell the flowers. The fact that the flower had reached her castle meant that someone else already knew about the existence of these plants, and yet the girl decided that many people didn't know about its existence. Lydia just couldn't understand how her friend could talk so stupidly. He himself doesn't know much about starflowers. Well, such people obviously have no predisposition to selling flowers. The lady is sure they did not pay attention to the starflowers because these plants were not to their taste, but the red-haired woman believed that she could earn a lot of money selling them. New provisions arrived, and the boy said that they had brought all the things she needed, but also asked what to do with their books and clothes, and whether it was worth putting the gold in the storeroom. Odette advised that the box with the books and dress should be left right there. Later, the girl will ask Mara to clean all this up. She has a lot of things here, so it's worth sorting it out together. This will be his punishment for not believing in her dream. But suddenly, the concubine asked where the gold had suddenly come from. But since the lady asked for a small amount of things, the girl had most of the budget left, so the difference left after purchasing provisions was converted into gold. It was strange that there was any money left, since she had ordered the same amount of things as last time. Besides, this time the redhead ordered more food because of Mara. She even bought books and a dress, so she thought that there wouldn't be much money left. Maybe these things just turned out to be cheap because of some promotion. Lydia found the books she needed. It was a complete collection of aristocratic etiquette rules, as well as her favorite cookbook. Previously, she didn't think that she needed to know etiquette, but after meeting Princess Airy, she changed her mind, but thought that she needed to master at least the basic knowledge of palace etiquette. The man suddenly asked why the lady had bought that particular dress. The girl had enough dresses, but she decided that it would be great to buy one of those that were currently fashionable. Well, the lady doubted there would be much gold there. It was the remaining money. There was so much of it that the blue-eyed girl thought they had made some kind of mistake. This was good. The lady said that she wanted to be rich, and now she would no longer need to run away from the imperial palace, to which the girl concluded that the emperor had lost his mind. If he allocated such a budget to her, a low-ranking concubine, then the lady could not imagine how much money the other concubines received. He may be an emperor, but how dare he waste the empire's money so thoughtlessly? Mar said that the budget for concubines is part of the budget of the imperial palace. Perhaps the emperor will not collect more taxes because he gave the girl a lot of money. Even if this is true, he is taking money that he could have used for other purposes instead of giving it to his concubines. Still, since Lydia has all this money, there is no reason for her to try to open her own store. The concubine said that she wanted to earn money herself. There would be no point if she became rich thanks to the money of someone she hated. And this is not ordinary money. This is money from taxes, earned through the blood, sweat, and tears of the inhabitants of the empire. Odette doesn't dream of becoming a rich concubine. She wants to be the owner of a flower shop. It makes much more sense than being locked in a corner of the palace, being the concubine of a tyrant. That is why the lady is going to run away from the palace, even if she has all this money. The blonde asked what the concubine was going to do with all this gold. The lady intended to send it back when new provisions arrived. Until then, they would just stand in the corner of the pantry. She had no intention of using even a part of this amount, because what if she spent it and got used to luxury? You need to think more about how you spend your money. Why did the emperor have to bother himself like that? While the redhead lived here alone, she cooked simple food. but now Mar lives with her, so she wants to cook something more complicated. The man sheepishly said that he would like to try cooking something new with his girlfriend. Then, it was necessary to finish unpacking the remaining boxes and start cooking. The girl could not even wait, but the man did not understand why she was so happy. In any case, from now on, the emperor would take over the cooking, so he asked for a cookbook, but the lady also wanted to cook. To this, the blonde only said that the concubine was a terrible cook. She did indeed pour a whole jar of sugar into the creamy stew, but she was simply mistaken. The lady asked to look at the star flowers, which are very sensitive. It's true, but in reality the girl is taking it out on him a little for what he said earlier. She asked him to look carefully, because the flowers from the section that he watered half of had not yet blossomed. They only needed to be given a certain amount of water, which would slightly cover the bottom of the watering can. From this point on, a man should just be more careful. The redhead was very surprised, because it seemed like he really listened to her advice. But before the blonde asks the question, she would like to sort this out first. The lady asked how long he was going to continue calling her by name. Come to think of it, all this time, the red-eyed man had been addressing her by name, without thinking about her status. He tried to change the subject again, but this time it wouldn't work because the concubine was determined to discuss this point. The redhead will give the blonde a choice of options, Lydia Odette or Lady Lydia. The emperor said he would take care of the cooking, so that option would be perfect. But His Majesty agreed to the third option, but he did not even hear what the girl wanted to suggest. Red-eyed reported that the lady said that this option would be perfect, so he agreed to call her that. The blue-eyed girl sheepishly stated that the third option was to call her mistress. It was so embarrassing that it was hard to breathe. It would have been better if the servant had yelled at her for treating him like a servant. But the redhead just wanted to tease him, and that was her name before she died 3 years ago. Then she thought that she would be able to hear her name at least like that if she heard a man call her mistress. But she expected that he would refuse in any case. So Lydia asked him twice if he was sure, but he insisted without even listening. Now the girl feels like a terrible person who treats her friend like a servant. The lady smiled and said that he could just call her by her first name, but the guy still started calling her madam. The blonde told his mistress that one flower was missing. One flower was missing. Yesterday there were definitely 32 buds, and today there are 31. The girl said that she had not touched these flowers, and then she actually asked if the man would really call her mistress. Asking why, the redhead received in response that it would be so because Lydia told him so. The man should think, they are friends after all, which is why such an address sounds strange, but the concubine herself told him about it, so why is she so unhappy? Suddenly, the emperor noticed that someone had touched the flowers, and there were no traces of roots here either. But then how could he disappear without a trace if this is simply impossible? If you look closely, the lady saw an empty space, but there were no signs that someone had dug up the flower. Sometimes little messages grow from the main stem. In any case, Mar is insanely attentive. He kept count of the flowers all this time. The girl was sure that the star flowers appreciated the attention he showed them. They must know that he cares about them, so he thinks that they will grow faster if he talks to them more. The redhead saw a hole and couldn't believe that in her perfect flower garden there was a hole. The soil smelled sweet, and the smell was so strong that it dulled the sense of smell. At the same time, Lydia felt relaxed. Where did this smell come from? It was too strange. Starflowers will become even more beautiful if you say kind words to them. This soil smelled so good that the girl even offered Mara to smell it, saying that the starflowers knew that he cared for them. Maybe this was how they expressed their gratitude to the guy. So the lady realized that these flowers depended on the attitude of other people towards them, and when the opportunity arose, she wanted to tell her best friend about this, but he suddenly grabbed her wrist. At this, the redhead saw blood on the man, realizing that, out of fear, she had hit him with the shovel, and immediately asked how he was and if the wound hurt much. From the emperor's reaction to her words, she did not understand what she had done wrong with the flowers, thinking that she had never seen this side of her servant's personality before. His red eyes reminded the concubine of fire, the same fear she had experienced before she stopped breathing when she was burned in a fire in her past life. The redhead said that she had only cut her finger, and the blonde had a whole wound on his face. She didn't know if she had any medicine left. That wasn't the point at all. He was just curious why the lady was trying to show him that land. She didn't smell like starflowers at all. Such a beautiful aroma could even be made into perfume. It may be that the thief, having stolen one of the flowers, accidentally spilled his perfume on the ground. But Lydia didn't know anything about those spirits, so the emperor decided to apologize for frightening her. He misunderstood the girl and reacted too negatively. Everything is fine, and there was no need to worry about it because all people make mistakes. In fact, he thinks that he saw similar shovels in the war, so he misunderstood, The concubine could not believe that an ordinary shovel could remind a man of an injury, all the while wondering what kind of terrible things were happening on the battlefield. All disinfectants and hemostatic agents ran out at the wrong time. To this, the blonde only tried to assure the girl that he was really okay, but she did not stop worrying and being nervous. There is a tulip castle nearby, and the lady thought of going there and borrowing some medicine from them. There was no election at all, so she decided to ask Princess Airy to borrow her medicine from Lily Castle. She had to get new things, so the redhead was sure that among them there was some means to stop the bleeding. The wounded man suddenly asked whether he had to go with his concubine to that castle. The redhead asked what he was talking about, because she needed to treat his wound as soon as possible, and what if he got an infection there while Lydia was gone? But he couldn't just walk into another concubine's castle. But still, it would have been easier to go there alone. But the emperor understood that the girl wasn't even listening to him. There are no guards or servants at the door to the Tulip Castle. There weren't many servants here last time, but usually Lydia saw them around all the time. And now the servants and guards can't be on break. They've all gone either on vacation, or it was completely unclear where most of the people had gone. The lady said that it was very strange, but all the servants seemed to have left this castle. But she thought it would be easier to ask Lady Airy herself for medicine. But the castle was empty, and the man was not even sure that the princess herself was here. But she said that she loved to read and spent most of her time in her office. While the concubine was walking to someone else's office, she thought about why Mar was afraid of shovels. At this rate, it would be difficult to grow flowers. It would be better to hire a therapist for him. But it's strange. The second floor is always the castle owner's quarters, but no one guards the door. Maybe something bad happened. In an instant, the redhead was grabbed by the emperor's hands, which covered her mouth so that she did not make a sound. It so happened that Mar kept her behind the wall so that no one would see them, but that person seemed to be the emperor himself. Airy just said His Majesty, which means that the emperor who is called the warmonger and murderer, the protagonist of this novel who is destined to be Airy's love, is there now. This simply couldn't be happening right now. The lady was watching the secret meeting of the two main characters. It seems that the emperor has finally opened his heart to Airy and is ready to give his feelings. Lydia knew from the beginning that he would not treat the main character as the 31st concubine. She is important in this plot, which is dedicated to the fact that these two overcome all difficulties and misfortunes, madly in love with each other. It seemed that Mar was also confused. Who would have imagined that the emperor would arrange secret meetings with a concubine who was practically his hostage? The redhead was very happy that when the emperor and Airy began dating, she would finally be free from danger. She and the princess became friends, so Lydia is confident that she will not die in agony like the character from the original story. When she becomes empress, it is worth asking her to help you leave the castle. The girl told His Majesty that she might be a princess from Fairland, but he shouldn't have been so cruel to her. The redhead didn't understand why the heroine was moving so far away from him, because she couldn't hear what she was saying. The 30th concubine witnessed the scene she had read in the novel, where the emperor announces that he wants to be closer to the princess. Airy was very worried about her kingdom, which she had been secretly receiving reports about, so she snuck into the basement to drink some alcohol in an attempt to cure her sleep. Then she came across the emperor secretly drinking in the basement, and being well-bred, the girl joined him. Then the emperor became drunk and took off his veil. Contrary to rumors, he looked kind and a little depressed, which made Airy interested in him. At first, His Majesty was wary of her and kept his distance, but when he saw how kind the main character was, he began to open up to her little by little. Seeing how fragile the emperor really was, Airy was overcome with a wave of inexplicable pity, and she began to hope that she could become a friend to the emperor, and he, meanwhile, fell more and more in love with her kindness and courage. But people will look at the Sun Castle if he thinks so. Lady Airy quarreled with the emperor after his unclear actions. The redhead didn't hear half of what they were saying, but she thought she had just said that he liked this girl. His Majesty said that there is only darkness around him, and the girl will never forget this quote. It is the most famous moment in the entire novel. Everyone has a star called hope burning in their heart, so you just have to ask yourself. He will guide him in the barren darkness, His Majesty, and the girl herself really got into the novel to reach the stars. Although the lady couldn't see them now, she could imagine what they were doing now. Probably the emperor extended his palm to her, and Airy placed hers on it. Lydia finally waited for the moment of this scene, but the blonde did not understand what the girl was so happy about. But the servant heard that the emperor confessed his love to Lady Airy, but she did not hear their entire conversation. The blonde still couldn't understand why the 30th concubine was so worried about who the emperor would love. Mar had been brought here as a prisoner, so the lady could understand why he was not particularly happy that something good was happening to the emperor. But Lydia could not tell him that the two would get married and the emperor would start his life anew. Today, he was especially stubborn. Apparently, he really hates the emperor. It seems he just can't stand him. The girl explained that if Eri and the emperor get married, the lady will become the empress, and what woman would be happy that her husband has other wives? So the redhead is sure that Eri will ask the emperor to send home all these concubines, including Lydia herself. Once this happens, Odette will be able to leave the imperial palace and open a flower shop. But she is sure that the emperor will become softer, so the warrior will no longer be there. Then Mar will be able to calmly leave the palace and keep in touch with the girl at a distance. The lady considered this simply wonderful news, both for her and for her servant. The lady said that people change a lot when they fall in love, and judging by the conversation, she was 100% sure it would come to pass that only good things would happen from that moment on. Lydia could not wait for the day when she would leave the imperial palace. To this, the blonde said that Lydia did not know if this was possible. Mar was worried about her, but she'd already told him everything. The emperor stated that his assistant's performance was very convincing. He wondered if anyone could have thought that he really liked the princess. The man was willing to bet that many ladies of Genovia were crying for the boy. He was simply chatting charmingly that day. Mar only told him to extract information about the Asters from the princess, and did not tell him to use such methods. But he gave permission, so it would be very stupid and unfair to be angry. It would be better to put an end to this ridiculous plan as soon as possible. There is no point in Emperor Heron trying to wring the favor of the princess of an enemy nation. If they are not careful, strange rumors will spread. This woman has apparently already misunderstood everything. If he exposed the emperor, who was in love with the princess of Fairland, and found out nothing, then there is no forgiveness for him. The servant was unable to find out how the Asters were processed, but he found a few clues. The topic was raised while they were walking with the princess in the garden. As His Majesty knows, Fairland has a flourishing perfume industry. So he complimented her perfume at her first ball in Heron and asked about it. She said that in her country, House Therion is famous for its perfume production. This is the family that put up the hardest fight against Heron in the last battle before Fairland fell. They were excellent swordsmen, but they disobeyed Heron and were killed for it. He thought they were just a family of trained knights, but apparently they had put down roots in the perfume business. Moreover, the princess told him about the Fairland proverb that he who is sad and taken by sorrow will easily understand his own scent. This metaphor must be referring to the Therion family's perfume philosophy. The doppelganger believed they might know how to process asters using this sentence as a clue. Perfumes make up the majority of Fairlad's production, but not everyone knows this important secret. He himself only recently learned that asters can be processed and used to bend others to his will. Maybe it would be worth sending someone to their house and stealing their heir. After all, the head of the family died. But someone had to take his place. If they steal the heir and scare them, most likely they will break and tell the secrets of the Astras. Fairland's finest perfumer and rebellion organizer must know something about these flowers. You just need to lure the princess to your side, because the people of her country respect the girl, and even those who belong to the House of Therion will obey. When she orders the Therion heir to come to Heron, all they have to do is arrest them and bring them to the imperial palace. The man was no longer going to involve the princess in this, especially since he didn't want to hear Lydia talk about the love of the main characters. But suddenly, the assistant shocked him because he asked to make Eri his empress. The emperor thought that there was no point in this, but the assistant asked him to think about it. If he made Eri the empress, then he would get to the truth by any means necessary. But suddenly, the blonde remembered his friend's words that no woman would like it if her husband had other wives, and when Eri became empress, she would be able to leave the imperial palace and open her own flower shop. But in that case, the red-eyed one decided that it was time for him to choose his empress. He ordered his assistant to make a statement about this as soon as the sun rose. The perfect solution was right under Mara's nose. First, she called him a pervert and a womanizer. Then she decided that he was in love with the princess, and after that, she tried to slip out of the imperial palace, being his concubine. This woman had the man completely confused, but he was not going to let her go so easily until the lady paid for her crimes. How dare the redhead say that she would run away from the castle, right in front of the emperor himself, even though she didn't know about it. The emperor's servants came to the girl and informed her that a new order had been issued by His Majesty. The decree stated that he would hold a competition to select an empress in the near future, so each concubine would have to show her best side. Lydia believed that things couldn't get any worse because she didn't want to be an empress at all. And why did the emperor need these competitions at all? And why did the plot of the novel change so much? Maybe the reason is that Lydia Odette is still alive. According to the novel's plot, this heroine was a minor villain, so she believed that saving her life would not bring about any global changes. Most likely, the lady caused the butterfly effect and changed the plot of the novel to reach for the stars because she escaped death and changed her destiny. This meant that there was no longer any point in knowing the original plot. The girl thought that Mar was too calm and asked why he was so cruel, because he was not at all worried about his friend. The redhead was sure that Eri would become empress. But why did everything turn out this way? The man asked why the lady was so sure of it. But didn't the red-eyed man see how he and the emperor looked at each other? However, it could just be a pretense. The emperor could just be making a calculated move to achieve his political goals, so Lydia has the same chance of becoming empress as she does. So it was in the plot to reach for the stars. They were the only ray of light in the impenetrable darkness of the novel. The girl hoped that the events in the Heron Empire would be the same as in the original story. But if Eri doesn't become empress, then what will happen to Lydia? Mar explained to the lady that the girl was a resident of the empire and a concubine. There was no reason why she should not be against marrying the emperor. She just had to think about what she would get if she became empress. But Lydia absolutely did not want this. The blonde man said that the lady was worried because she thought he would cheat on her with other women, but he didn't think the emperor was interested in them at all. He has never touched his concubines or maids. All the man is interested in is conquering the continent. Perhaps he doesn't have time to meet women because he is busy with war issues. So maybe the emperor is not such a bad person as Lydia thinks. The redhead thanked the guy for supporting her, but since things turned out this way, she believes she should get him removed from the competition as soon as possible. But the concubine had an idea. What if she dressed in all black from head to toe? The blonde asked if the lady really should go that far. The redhead assumed that the emperor was not a cruel murderer and pervert, and assumed that everything would work out and she would become empress. But what if it turned out that the man was not at all to her taste, and this is what she worries about the most? The emperor can choose the woman he likes, but the girl has no choice. What if she sees his face and doesn't like his appearance? And they wouldn't be an ordinary couple, they would be emperor and empress, which meant they couldn't get divorced simply because they weren't right for each other. Lydia likes kind men, and she would like to be with someone who will always think about her, even if he is not very talkative. The girl does not like rude and cold men. Her future husband should be affectionate and kind to her. At the same time, she would like him to be brave and charismatic. The blonde asked what if the emperor turned out to be her ideal. What if he was the man of her dreams from head to toe? But she said this because the emperor is definitely not such a person. It is only a hypothetical question. If the man turns out to be ideal, will the lady want to become his empress? The redhead asked for more details about what exactly the emperor would look like. The lady said that at the very least, he needed to be as handsome as Mar. She likes noble men with a sweet face more than very scary ones, so that they have the same delicate features as her servant. In truth, the girl likes men who anyone would call handsome. The concubine knew that she couldn't present the emperor like that, so she wanted to close the topic as soon as possible. The emperor is cold to everyone except Eri, so there is no point in falling into hypothetical realities. Whichever method will bring her elimination from the competition the fastest is better. Or maybe she could avoid participating altogether, as much as she wanted to just run away. Maybe she could do that tonight. The redhead told the man that he needed to pack some things, no matter what they were, as long as they were easy to carry, to which he thought she was going on a picnic, saying that it was already dark. The blonde man couldn't believe that the concubine wanted to escape from the imperial palace, but she explained that she couldn't just sit and wait for the competition, and Mar wanted to escape from the imperial palace, so maybe this was his only chance. The girl confidently said that she was very happy that they were running away together, but his country was left in ruins after they lost the war. The man said that he was from Genovia, which is why Lydia, in that case, invited him to live with her. They could continue to live together as they had before, even after eloping. That sounded good. These guys got along well. She would like to continue living with him if he doesn't mind. They are good friends. So the girl is sure that they will make great neighbors. In the bushes, the lady noticed security that had reached very far. At this rate, Lydia will soon be discovered, so the girl must hide. Mar helped the girl hide in a tree. She thought that no one walked along this road. But then, where did the knights come from? To this, the servant said that they should return to Lilia's castle. It seemed they had increased security because of the upcoming election of the empress, and he thought they should forget about the idea of escaping. He asked her not to get upset so much ahead of time, so he suggested coming up with another plan upon arrival at the castle, and also, perhaps, the emperor would be kinder than she thought. But even if that happens, Odette doesn't want to marry him at all. In the end, he and Mar returned to Lily Castle without taking a single step outside the imperial palace. As if to mock their attempt to escape from the palace, they received shocking news in Lily Castle. He heard the news of the empress being elected. It seemed like the concubines would be competing with each other. While he would have loved to see her command His Majesty's attention and take the position of empress, her father doubted that would happen given the lack of progress over the past 3 years. The old man found another match for the girl. He heard that Baron Edison from the neighboring territory was looking for a third wife, so he sent him her portrait. A new mine was discovered on their territory, and he hoped that he would invest a large sum of money in this gold mine, and his daughter would marry him. Also, the Baron liked the portrait of the redhead, so she should not despair even if she does not win this competition. Her father will be waiting for her in front of the imperial palace next month. The man was going to sell Lydia for money when she was already the emperor's concubine. His greed knows no bounds, which is probably why the man has lost his mind. And how could he even call himself a father? The lady didn't think she would ever read something like that again. That would make her jaw drop. In any case, she thought that the competition would last for a month. She would not have read the decree carefully because she was busy planning her escape. Apparently, there was something in the description of the competition that the concubine might have missed. The discharged concubines will have to return to their homeland. They will be given compensation and the right to remarry. The man suddenly declared that, judging by the words about compensation, the emperor was kinder than the girl thought. If Eri becomes the empress, the rest of the concubines will be free, of course. This is great news, but it means that the lady will have to return home as soon as she leaves the palace, and she will be given to another man even before they meet him. The girl thought that she should simply exclude herself from the competition and marry this aristocrat, but that also sounded terrible. Then, should she lock herself in the imperial palace and maintain a good relationship with Eri for the rest of her life? But that outcome was also delusional, because then Lydia would be lonely and sad. The blonde suddenly declared that there was only one solution to this problem. Red-Eyed said that this solution would be to seduce the emperor. After all, if she succeeds, she won't have to marry an old man or run away from the palace and open a flower shop. To this, the servant declared that he would help his girlfriend seduce the emperor. Maybe the emperor wasn't as bad as Lydia thought. She could charm him and become the empress. Then she could do whatever she wanted. But the redhead has tried so hard to survive for the past 3 years that she can't accept such an unfair outcome. But Eri must become the empress in this world. Therefore, the girl cannot go against her. Even so, she must do everything to survive. The concubine does not have to become an empress, but she needs to become one of the finalists. No one can quarrel with a concubine who is close to becoming empress. Odette thought that she had already gone crazy since she agreed to something like this. Maybe it was all because of the shock from that letter. Although, she didn't even have to be a finalist. She would just take the compensation and leave. Yesterday, the girl blurted out without thinking, so she would explain everything to Maru. But suddenly, the man brought her water to wash and breakfast. The girl did not understand why Mar was suddenly doing all this. He woke her up and brought water with breakfast, as if he was waiting for her to wake up. He was trying to cheer her up after yesterday. The redhead asked why the blonde was acting as if he was her servant, but he had said yesterday that he would help her become empress. The lady, of course, is not going to sit and wait to be removed, but she needs to at least make a good impression on the emperor and the other concubines in order to remain safe. So she suggested that they come up with another way. Why not just find a better family to marry? Or buy a small house that will be located far away, with his own money from the compensation, and live a quiet life, which Mar refused. No one knows the emperor better than the blonde man, so he is confident that she will become empress with his help. The man knew everything about him, including his habits and tastes. But still, Lydia was more than sure that the emperor liked Eri. How could she come between them? Maybe it would be better to ask Eri for help. They had become close lately, so she didn't want to disturb her, and she was sure that she wouldn't turn away from the heroine since they were now friends. The lady kept saying that she would open a small business selling flowers with the money from the compensation, and she was sure that no one would try to do anything to her if she had Eri's support. In that case, the blonde asked what if the girl did not receive any compensation. Those who leave the competition at an early stage will not receive any compensation at all, but this was still written in the decree received. Mar heard the maids talking about it when he went out for a walk at dawn. This means that concubines who leave the competition early will be considered unfit for the competition and will be sent home without compensation. The girl will not have a penny left if she is kicked out of the palace, then she will not be able to open a business. But why does the man want the girl to marry the emperor so much? so Lydia asked what she would get out of it if she became empress. But as an empress, the lady will be able to protect her friend, and for the same reason, he will no longer have to secretly hide. In that case, she had to go through a few rounds at all costs, but I wondered if the emperor even liked other women. What if he threw everyone out of the competition except Eri at the very beginning? Then, the concubine will try to avoid being eliminated from the competition in the early rounds, and when the time comes to leave the palace, she will take Mara with her and say that he is her servant. The blonde decided to wait until Lydia finished her meal and then eat himself, but he never worried about it, so the redhead tried to explain to him that he was her friend and not just a servant. But now everything is different. The girl will compete for the position of empress, so she should not forget about her dignity. Other concubines may have a dozen servants to help them, but they just have to leave everything to the man and focus on the competition. In any case, the lady was very glad that Mar was here. He was so kind and looked after the concubine in everything. He took on the role of a servant to help the redhead become empress, supported her when she cried because of the competition. The man suddenly asked if the lady really thought he was a kind person. She said he was the best man she had ever met. The idea of a competition to select an empress is already astounding, and the emperor also decided to send all the concubines home with compensation. First, he changed a couple of rules, and now he is completely immersed in the election process. This complicates everything. His Majesty's assistant has been acting as the emperor's assistant for a long time, but he is still a substitute. When the emperor gives him orders, he has no choice but to obey them without question. Previously, the emperor was not interested in anything except war, so he decided that he would not notice if the guy gradually took control of the throne and the empire. He had been completely neglecting his duties lately, as they began investigating the Astor case at Eri. The assistant planned to make the girl the empress under the pretext that it was necessary to collect information on the Astras. But thanks to the emperor's announcement of a competition instead of electing the empress himself, his plan went down the drain. He thought to change the rules of the competition in favor of Eri, but the emperor also set them, so nothing can be done here. Brunet knew that he had to take possession of the imperial seal. Even though he made him his double, he did not give up his seal. The seal grants absolute power and legitimacy, but no one had ever used it before, so the boy considered it a mere symbolic trinket. The blonde will run the competition himself, so the look-alike should just follow their instructions. The green-eyed man apologized for the indiscreet question, but why did he go to such trouble? Wouldn't it have been better to find the preparation of the Astor extract through the remaining residents in Fairland as early as possible? But it will be a little easier to do this through the coronation of Eri. There is no point in holding a competition, to which the emperor stated that he did not ask the opinion of his servant. Red-Eyed ordered to extract information from her as soon as possible. He does not intend to tolerate scandalous rumors about himself and the Princess of Fairland any longer. And also, Geppetto asked him what he needed to do regarding the emperor's medicines. The blonde ordered to tell him that he would take care of it himself, to which the servant only bowed. His Majesty asked whether it was kindness when a person did everything so that another person did not have to lift a finger. He said that these were the duties of a servant. They usually do their job, so it cannot be called kindness. Most likely, the red-eyed one means showing leniency to the enemy on the battlefield. They won't have to lift a finger, because he himself will behead them with one movement. The man said that what the emperor described was more like care, but the other person might not like it, so you should make sure that he is comfortable with it. First, you should find out his opinion, stay calm, and treat him with care. He is probably asking about the easiest and fastest way to kill the enemy. The brunette asked to make sure that this person does not get hurt or feel bad, and also to try to make him happy. Also, he should take into account his wishes and keep them like a treasure. The blonde asked about the lady who loved people so much, whether it was necessary to always be so polite and kind. To this, the servant told her that one should never quarrel with her. The double was glad that this conversation was over, because he even thought that the emperor had guessed about his plan. Besides, he used military metaphors. The girl praised the tea that Mar prepared for her. The girl said yesterday that she wanted to eat raisin cookies, so the man made them too, saying that next time he would bake caramel cookies. From that day on, the blonde did many pleasant little things for the concubine. At first, she was uncomfortable, but she could not interrupt his efforts because he was pleased with himself. Before she had time to notice, her shame evaporated, and she began to get used to the fact that he was always there. It looked like Lydia Odette had a guest waiting outside. He said that this was the first invitation to the first stage of the competition, so you should read His Majesty's letter carefully and be prepared. The servant will return to escort the girl tomorrow night. The competition will consist of 3 rounds, where all the concubines will be tested to see if they are ready to become empresses. They will be graded according to their performance in their tasks, and half of them will be eliminated. After 3 rounds, the candidate with the highest score will be declared the winner and become the empress. Everything is like in a survival game. I wonder if the losing candidates will be able to return to the game. The lady could not lose in the first round and leave the palace with nothing. In any case, Lydia's first task was a masquerade ball, and it was obvious that the winner had already been chosen. Tomorrow night, all the concubines must take part in a masquerade ball that will take place in the sunny castle. They must choose a beautiful outfit, but hide their faces under a mask. Didn't he make masks a requirement because he also chose the winner, since he wouldn't be able to recognize the identities of the concubines if they were wearing masks? Lydia thought so too, but no, he definitely made this condition. Considering Aries' participation, it was obvious. Maybe they had a quarrel with the emperor. Then it was only a consequence of a lover's quarrel. It's not that the lady will try to attract the emperor's attention, but she will also give it her all. Still, something is fishy here. It's clear that Aries will eventually become the empress. So why is the emperor holding this competition? He needs an excuse to crown her. But in the original story, she became the empress without any problems. Then, the concubine thought that she would find out the reason at the beginning of the competition. Now, the most important thing is to worry about passing the first round. The amount of compensation money will affect the redhead's status, so it is better to hold out until the last round. In this case, now she is aiming for second place, thinking about what dress to wear. The girl began to puzzle over what kind of dresses the emperor liked. The favorite color was black. Didn't the girl recently buy a black dress? Mar suggested wearing it. The emperor always wore black clothes when not on official occasions, so Mar thought he liked that color more than others, but he didn't think the emperor would like lighter shades more. Maybe he likes black clothes because bloodstains don't show up as well. Besides, he doesn't like to stand out. The official's husband is sure that he would prefer a discreet black dress to a bright white one. And the previous emperor wanted the same thing. He didn't want his son to attract attention. It sounds like there was some drama in the royal family's life that the concubine doesn't know about, and now she feels a little sorry for the emperor. Maybe he was not as cruel and scary as she thought. She couldn't believe that he had to wear black clothes at the behest of his own father. Maybe he just got used to this color and began to love black. Mar was the emperor's victim. He would probably be upset if she said that she felt sorry for his worst enemy. The girl felt a little sorry for the emperor after Mara's story, but in the end, he was still the emperor. But most of all, I felt sorry for the blonde. How much he wanted to take revenge on the emperor if he had collected such a huge amount of information about him. The ribbon on the redhead's dress had come a little loose, so she asked her servant to tie it. She was sure that the ribbon would look better if she untied it and tied it again. But he suddenly apologized and left, saying that he urgently needed to prepare dinner. The blonde wondered why the lady felt sorry for him, since no one had ever cared about him or pitied him. She is the first person in his life who cared about him. When the girls showed up at the masquerade, everyone started discussing the fact that the redhead was wearing a black dress. There hadn't been any tragic events in the Empire recently, but she was still dressed in black, which was an interesting choice. Well, the dress was of the highest quality. Maybe it was some kind of trend that the other concubines didn't know about. The concubine thought that no one would notice her because of her low rank, but her black dress stood out too much. It seemed that people's perception of the color black was much more negative than she expected. Lydia saw a large crowd of people, thinking that something had happened. The reason for the crowd was Aerie, who was wearing a black dress like Lydia. In this world, black color symbolizes destruction, war, and death. Normally, people would never choose this color. Does this mean that Aerie also knows the emperor's favorite color? The 30th concubine doesn't know how she managed to get this information, but for now, it's best for her to avoid it. She hoped that the princess would not misunderstand her when she saw her dress. She was not trying to win the emperor's attention, but simply wanted to survive. Today's masquerade ball is the first stage of the competition. The concubines must wear masks and interact with aristocrats who also wear masks. Of course, behind the mask of one of the aristocrats, there will be an emperor, and he will choose those concubines who will pass to the next stage. Otherwise, the ball would be no different from an ordinary masquerade ball. Maybe it's because no one knows when and where the emperor will appear, but all the concubines are smiling. The outline of the 30th concubine's dress must look ominous. Everyone is slowly dividing into pairs, but no one approaches her. She felt like she was surprised on a blind date with no partner. On the other hand, it is immediately clear that Aerie is the main character of the novel. She is also wearing a black dress, but men are vying with each other to invite her to dance. The girl couldn't see his face because of the mask, but he had silver hair, just like the emperor. The lady was wondering whether she should even talk to him, since he should show her dress. She was the only one who hadn't been invited to dance yet. At this rate, she would stand in the corner of the hall the entire ball. Then she would definitely not be allowed to the next stage. A man approached her and asked her to dance with him if she didn't have a worthy partner yet. The other couples start dancing slowly to match each other's tempo, but the man starts dancing fast. The redhead asked him to slow down a bit, but he said that by dancing fast, she would stand out more than anyone else. It seemed to the stranger that the concubine wanted to attract attention to herself. She had interested others with her dress, and now he would help her with the next step. That was probably the reason why she was standing in the corner away from everyone, in a scary dress. There is no need to stand out even more. Since he understands the hidden motive of all the concubines, he decided that he would be a great match for the girl. The brunette understood the situation the concubines found themselves in. Although not all of them were ladies from prestigious families, the emperor clearly treated the lady with indifference. Their families may not be happy about it, but at least they will all have the opportunity to remarry. The redhead realized that this man had been looking for a woman for himself from the very beginning, but the concubines were the daughters of rich families. After leaving the palace, they would receive huge amounts of compensation. It was clear as day that he was trying to find a suitable concubine and marry her after the first round was over. The lady suddenly shouted that the stranger was mistaken because she was not going to marry him. They say that beautiful women refuse gentlemen 3 times. This turned out to be true, but considering that she was rejecting one and only suitor. The lady asked him to let her go, but the man just laughed, saying that she was rejecting him for the 3rd time, so all she had to do was accept his offer. The aristocrat immediately ran away when he saw Mara standing behind the girl. The emperor extends his hand to the concubine and appears to invite her to dance. To this, she only said that she was a little tired, because the dance with those aristocrats had exhausted her considerably, so she would not like to repeat the sad experience. Even so, she needs to get close to the emperor and make a good impression on him. But suddenly, she saw that the emperor was dancing with Eri, and they saw no one but themselves. But didn't this black dress embarrass him? But still, the blonde did not look like the former aristocrat. It seems that the concubine has no other choice. She can't leave the competition without getting even a centimeter closer to the emperor. If this guy behaves the same way as last time, then she will step on his foot with her heel and run out of the hall. This man danced simply amazingly, which surprised Lydia very much. Odette called him Lord, asking his name. She didn't understand why he was silent. Did he really want to seem mysterious? Anyway, it was funny. Even though she had never met him before, she felt strangely comfortable with him. But suddenly, the red-haired girl asked how Mar got here. The red-eyed man suddenly asked how the concubine recognized him. She said that the man had long, beautiful fingers, and his 2nd and 4th fingers were equally long, and they also had calluses, most likely from using a sword. The blonde was shocked, because the girl actually recognized him by looking only at his hands. But Lydia always thought they were beautiful. Now she can recognize him, regardless of his clothes. But the blue-eyed girl asked how he got here and what if he was caught. The man said that one aristocrat gave him his invitation, and since he was wearing a mask, no one would be able to recognize him. This meant that her friend had intimidated some aristocrat with a dagger. He could have simply waited for Lydia in Lilia's castle, but for some reason he decided to take such a dangerous action. But still, it was the easiest way to get into the ball, and that freak ran away as soon as he scared him. They will both end up in prison if anyone reports them to the knights. But the girl doubts that Mar will listen to her, even if she explains everything, so she simply asked to return to Lilia's castle after this dance. The blonde wanted to stay, saying that he promised that he would obey. But if anyone finds out that Mar pretended to be an aristocrat and snuck in there, then he will be in danger. The redhead saw no other way out. She would let him stay a little longer and then tell him to return to the castle. The girl said that they had to dance to avoid suspicion, and that the man had to return to the castle before it was too late. It was time for him to return to Lily's castle. If he lingered here, he might be exposed. The emperor might recognize Mara, despite the mask on his face. The blonde asked the concubine to return home immediately after the ball ended and tell him how the first stage went. Before he was so stubborn, but now the man listens to her. Maybe Mar just wanted to dance a little, which was charming. The lady would like to have a boyfriend like Mar, but not only handsome, but also sweet, listens to everything she says, and lately, he has begun to smile more often, exactly her ideal type of man. But what can she do? Lydia can't think of him as a potential partner. After all, he is her friend, and she must protect him. Now that the servant is gone, she needs to find the emperor and Eri. But suddenly, the redhead saw that they left together, and she couldn't squeeze through the crowd. Tripping over something, the girl began to fall and landed right into the emperor's arms. Even if he is a tyrant, the concubine does not think that he would commit a crime right in front of the woman he likes. The double said that there was no need to apologize, because it was his own fault for not giving way to the girl when she wanted to pass. But he had silver hair like the emperor, and she felt like he was getting along well with Eri. There's something fishy about this. In the novel, the emperor was cold to everyone except Eri. He started from scratch after he fell in love. Or maybe he's just pretending to be kind so people don't discover his identity. The girl had no idea, but she didn't think he was angry with her, and she accomplished her task. Redhead has already done everything she could, so nothing can be changed, even if she tries hard. After Mara, no one else invited her to dance, and the lady did not have time to notice how the masquerade ball came to an end. Usually, the highest-ranking guests leave the hall first, according to palace regulations. But because all the guests hid their identities at the ball, the male aristocrats who were not participating in the competition left first, after which the concubines themselves left. Everyone has worked well, and the results will be delivered to the castles to the concubines, so it is worth returning to your place and waiting for an answer. After tonight, half of the concubines will leave the imperial palace. The redhead dressed according to imperial tastes, which means she should pass. But she was still worried. It wasn't fair that she had to compete directly with Eri. They both wore black dresses, but she was just gorgeous. Having met the princess, she said that they had seen each other for a long time. She wanted to say hello to her, but there was no opportunity. Eri is doing well. She also wanted to say hello, but she was so surrounded that they didn't find the opportunity to go and talk to Lydia. Either way, Eri looked absolutely gorgeous. She thought the lady was flattering her, but today at the ball, they sparkled brighter than anyone else. The lady said that Lydia's dress and her mask suited her very well. She can say the same about the princess. She didn't even know that black suited her so well. In fact, her maid prepared this dress for her mistress. She told her what color His Majesty preferred. Her Highness made friends with the maids who work in the Sunny Castle, and they helped her, of course. She could get into trouble if the Emperor himself found out about it. But Eri will do everything for the one she is truly in love with. In the novel, Eri realizes how she feels after the Emperor confesses his feelings to her. Only with the Emperor could she forget about the burden of her responsibility as the princess of a fallen nation. Then it would be better to clear up any misunderstandings she might have. She needs to tell Lady Eri something. The redhead said that she did not want to become Empress because she did not like His Majesty. The lady just wants to get compensation money. She invited the lady to the flower shop after she gets the title. When she is eliminated from the competition, she plans to leave the palace and open her own flower shop. Therefore, Eri should not worry about her at all. She will support the girl in everything she has. The pink-haired girl said that there was no need to say that. It was natural for a concubine to want to become an empress. She said that she might have been bothered by the fact that they both came in black dresses and by what she told her. But Eri didn't mind at all. On the contrary, she would also support her friend. So, it is worth supporting healthy competition and achieving your goals together. The girl thought that she could finally escape the role of a villain. She couldn't even imagine that Eri saw her as a rival. What if she decides she wants to be empress by the end of the competition? Blue-Eyed did absolutely everything for the sake of her beloved kingdom. A few days after the masquerade ball, she received a letter containing the results of the first stage and details of the second. The winner of the first stage was the 31st concubine. Lydia knew that Eri would take first place, and she was curious how she would do. The redhead was simply shocked that she took second place. But she danced very little at the ball. How is that even possible? It seems the Emperor is very fond of the color black. Lydia realized that now was not the time to sit around. It's better to tell Maru all the details as soon as possible. But where did he suddenly disappear to? He said he would water the starflowers. Perhaps I should just wait for him here. And while the girl waits, she will finish reading the letter. The theme of the first round was beauty. The theme of the second will be wisdom. The concubines would have to silence the Emperor's bedroom with one thing. It was a tricky task. How can you fill a bedroom with just one thing? The lady had no idea what might be suitable, and she decided to read about it in the library. Eri told her where the library was. She said that there were a lot of different books there, so she could find the answer to the riddle there. The girl was suddenly informed that she was forbidden entry because nitrification was required to enter the Imperial Library. The lady asked if there was any other way to confirm her identity. Her castle was far from there, so she would waste a lot of time if she went there for him. She thinks she can attract His Majesty's attention if she hangs around here. But doesn't the 30th concubine have the right to read the books of the Imperial Palace? One of the girls recognized Lydia Odette and decided to approach her. This girl was Dahlia Lindgren, the Emperor's 7th concubine. The blonde said that she would vouch for her companion so that Lydia would be allowed into the library. Odette thanked the lady for helping her get into the library, to which she said that concubines should help each other. She suggested looking for her together. They would help them get the books in her name. By the way, the concubine couldn't believe that she was spending time with the concubine who had won second place in the competition. The concubine who won first place was already quite famous to many, but there was very little information about them, so she was interested to know what kind of person she was. The blonde loves cute birds more than anything in the world, but the imperial palace has forbidden them to be kept in the castle. So he doesn't care whether she wins the concubine competition or gets kicked out of the imperial palace. The problem is that her father won't forgive her if she deliberately loses the competition. It is not surprising that the redhead has recently stopped seeing birds. It was a pity, but it seems that the starflowers are no longer in any danger. The imperial palace is so cold. How could they throw out all those cute birds? Lydia even said that they looked like statues. Dahlia was charming. She thought that they got along well with her. But suddenly, the blue-eyed girl saw a book about birds and wanted to read it. In any case, Odette needs technical books, where books are about common sense and knowledge. Suddenly, the redhead saw a book called From the Beginning of Time to the Present. The basic ingredients for alchemy are grated unicorn horn and a leaf of morning dew. Take these ingredients and place them in a cold bed of melting ice. In the very beginning, when the world was born, Hellas, the goddess, created two living beings in her image. She named them werewolf and human, and placed a blessing on both. The werewolf was given strength and a muscular body, while the human was endowed with complex emotions and intelligence, so they lived in harmony. Hellas ordered her children to rule the world together, starting from the earth to the heavens. The werewolf was like a wild wolf and used brute force to keep everything under control, while the human was more emotional and relied on intellectual abilities, so the earthly creatures sided with the rule of the human. The man felt sorry for the werewolf and prayed to the heavens, asking to make the werewolf half human and half monster. But the werewolf considered such a request unfair and became enraged, and a war broke out between the werewolf and humans for the first time in the history of the world, and the continent was divided into two parts because of that war. The redhead was so carried away by the myth about the creation of the world that she was reading that she did not notice how the sun set behind the horizon, and it was time to leave the library. As for the rest of the story, she decided to read it after borrowing books from the next. She was in a good mood because she became friends with the seventh concubine. She was so kind and open. But she couldn't even imagine what was happening in Lilia's castle all this time. Returning to the palace, the girl saw Mara, who for some reason was covered in blood. It was real blood, which made the redhead incredibly scared. There was a dead animal next to him, and the lady suddenly realized that it looked like the blonde had eaten the poor thing. The man suddenly started shouting that he would explain everything. She shouldn't have even asked him what happened, but the girl ran away without even listening to him. He said he would explain everything, but the concubine did not even try to listen to him. She must have upset him a lot. She should go back to him. Seeing Ari, she began to ask why Lydia had turned pale and why she didn't rest in her castle until she came to her senses. The girl recently bought some tea with a calming effect. Just when she thought she wanted to have a cup of it, it appeared right in front of her. The maids have prepared some desserts, so Ari asks her to take as much as she wants. The tea was simply gorgeous, and the lady was glad to hear the compliment. By the way, Ari congratulated Lydia on winning the first round. They were simply irresistible in that dress. She knew that she would take first place. Odette was initially hesitant about choosing a dress, and chose exactly this one because she learned that His Majesty loves black. Lydia was sure that His Majesty decided that she was the most beautiful lady at that ball. Since the ladies were alone now, Ari decided that Lydia could tell her about her worries. The lady said that she thought she had accidentally discovered the secret of her close friend. She was so stunned that she ran away from him in fear. The man told her to wait, but she was so scared that she ran away from him as fast as she could. The pink-haired girl doesn't know the secret of her friend's friend, so she didn't understand what could have scared her so much. But the redhead said that he asked her to wait. He probably just wanted to explain. The princess was sure that it hurt him to see her fear. If the blue-eyed one does this, she will be able to destroy the wall of misunderstanding. Lydia thanked Her Highness for her advice and decided to go talk to her friend. It was nice talking to her, as Ari said next time she will visit Lydia. Not finding the guy at home, she began to reason that it was dangerous outside, and he couldn't just leave, because he knew about it. But the redhead is trying to fix the situation, just like Ari said. First, it was worth looking for Mara in the places where he is most often. Having finally found the man, the concubine found him in a crying state. The demon suddenly asked if Lydia was also going to leave him. He reported that the lady had run away from him, and he had tried to stop her, but she had left him anyway. The blonde asked if Lydia really despised him now, so much so that she avoided him. The girl said that, to be honest, she was scared because he didn't look like the Mara she knows. That's why she ran away. But the lady didn't want to know the reason for his actions. One day, a man and a woman got married for personal reasons, and for a long time they had been arguing because they could not bring an heir to the world. The woman was so afraid of being abandoned if she did not give birth to an heir that she lied about being pregnant and got the child involved, whom she successfully passed off as her son. Seeing the boy's silver hair, similar to his wife's, the man made him his heir, not even doubting his relationship with him. But the child grew up, and problems emerged one after another. His appearance, character, habits, abilities, strange fits of rage. They made him completely different from his parents. Having discovered this oddity, the man conducted a secret investigation and, in the end, came across a stranger. Rumored to have had an affair with his wife's sister, the man's name and status are unknown, but he was able to become an influential knight due to his outstanding sword skills. And he had silver hair and red eyes, a handsome face, and a tall, muscular body. Everything about this knight reminded the man of his son, and although the man wanted to believe that it was all just a coincidence, this knight also had uncontrollable fits of rage. The man grabbed his sword like a madman and continued to participate in the war, despite the protests of his beloved. He killed countless people, as if he had a grudge against all of humanity, and as a result, he died on the battlefield. Moreover, the blonde's anger turned out to be more terrible than his rage. If his own father hated all humanity, then Mar himself wanted to destroy all living things. When the Emperor sees the blood of a living person, he immediately goes mad. The red-eyed man's mind loses control over his body, and he turns into a wild beast. Everyone calls the blonde the god of war because he went crazy at the sight of blood, being an excellent fighter. But in the end, the man could not live a normal life like everyone else. Starting from the first manic attack, he becomes too fierce if he does not shed someone's blood. Mar could only stop his terrible attacks by drinking the blood of a freshly killed animal. Although it was a temporary solution, the blood suppressed the rage in the blonde, keeping the Emperor from the desire to shed human blood. But he couldn't change what he had already done, and as a result, his father stopped seeing him as his son. He became angry when he thought his mother had cheated on him with her sister's lover. The man found it humiliating that royal blood was mixed with the dirty blood of a knight. So when Mar grew up, he sent him to the battlefield. He said it was the only place where my filthy blood would do any good, and that he must kill until his muscles ached and his heart ran cold. The blonde spilled the blood of others while he waited for his death and drank blood to survive. It could not be said that his words were not true. The Emperor suddenly asked if Lydia could be with a monster like him. The girl said that the guy can't do anything about his condition, and besides, he forces himself to drink blood so as not to hurt people. In fact, the previous emperor was a disgusting person. He didn't deserve to be a father. How could he say something like that to his son before he died? If she were in his place, she would have hired all the doctors on the continent to help him live peacefully with people. There was no point in remembering the words of a father who was not like that. You just need to forget everything he told him. Who would not be upset to hear how badly a person dear to him was treated? Moreover, Mara's father hurt him, but he does not burst into tears and does not cry. Lydia stated that a man doesn't have to listen to his parents at all. The blue-eyed girl said that she doesn't have parents. Despite this, she copes well herself. Looking at others, she can confidently say that parents are not always good people. The concubine has known this truth for a long time, but her parents' attitude towards her was simply terrible. Therefore, a man needs, first of all, to love himself. His parents' opinion of him is not that important. Of course, good parents should be treated accordingly, but he should still value himself more than anyone else. Therefore, it is stupid to think about the words of the father. Perhaps this is why Lydia's father tried to marry her off to that old man, because she is not his biological daughter. In this world, the parents are Viscount and Viscountess Odette. The lady told him about her parents from her past life without even thinking. The blonde took the lady by the waist, telling her that she was the only one who accepted him for who he was. As long as the girl is by his side, he has nothing else to dream about. He moved closer to his beloved and kissed her tenderly. The lady immediately decided to change the subject and asked what the task for the second round would be. Lydia also decided to tell Maru that she took second place in the first round. The concubine said that it was worth checking the flowers, since she had not been to Lily Castle for a day because there was no time. The lady looked at one of the flowers, realizing that they were melting. Now they even smelled. That sweet scent seemed familiar to the girl. It smelled like fabric softener. This had happened before. There was a scent in the air, although these flowers do not smell. He speaks of a pleasant smell coming from the soil, but if it is not the perfume that the thief spilled, this aroma feels quite different. But she didn't think anything was the work of a thief. It didn't look like any flower had gone missing again, but the flowers themselves never smelled. The soil smelled, and the flower that Lydia planted in this smelling soil disappeared. Perhaps no one stole the flower, since it could have simply melted and soaked the soil, but the lady did not fertilize the flowers with anything. Maybe Lydia's tears were the reason. She was crying next to the flowers now. It seems that starflowers melt and start to smell when tears fall on them. The flower melts only a little, but the scent lasts for quite a long time. How interesting. Fill the emperor's bedroom with one thing. That was the answer. The concubine was asked to stand in line in front of the doors. Everything is fine. The redhead can do it. Mar realized that the flower melts and becomes fragrant when tears fall on it. This was true, but the girl had never seen anything like it before either. The girl was going to make perfume from starflowers and open a business selling star perfume when she left the castle. She plans to fill the prince's room with perfume as a test for further business. The blonde knew that aster perfume was a real hell. He knew how to make perfume from them, but it seemed too dangerous an undertaking. Even if there is only a little perfume, someone can steal the idea of a redhead if they spray it in front of everyone. You could just use fruits because they smell good. This should have worked. They will go experiment. I wonder what fruits they have left in the kitchen. No matter where the lady looked, she could not find a fruit with a strong aroma that lasted longer than the star fruit. For the second round, fruits with a strong smell would be ideal, but those fruits don't smell that strong. The star flowers melted because of her tears and became fragrant, and their scent was much stronger than the scent of fruits. If so, the girl only needs to melt the star flower and let the fruits absorb it. There was not much time left. The servant asked for forgiveness, saying, but they needed to solve the riddle quickly. She needs to leave as soon as possible, but if she prefers to choose a specific date, they will take it into account. He didn't want to offend the lady by pointing out her loss when he voiced his decision, so he omitted the humiliating part. The concubine definitely filled this room with one thing, but can a man smell the fragrance? For some reason, everyone became so happy and started running around the entire bedroom from this smell. They apologized to their people because they were blind and did not understand the meaning of her decision. In any case, the redhead passed the second round, and the idea with the fruits was a success. The second person who was able to solve the riddle the fastest was, of course, Airy. She used a candle, but apparently the judge was more picky than expected, and she had to convince them that the solution was suitable for the task at hand. Of course, she did not despair, and proved admirably that her solution was suitable for the second round. Some of the other concubines also managed to advance, but their decisions were simply terrible, so this time, Airy will be able to take first place. At Lily's castle, before the results of the second round were announced, Lydia used a fruity scent and Lady Airy used a candle. It seems like everyone took a creative approach to solving the riddle. Odette called Lady Dahlia a smart and beautiful girl, adding that leaving the castle would be a huge disappointment. The blonde had never been interested in being the emperor's concubine anyway, so she wasn't too upset. Although the concubine is very upset that she will not be able to see each other anymore, but they can still see each other even after the lady leaves the castle. But in fact, the blonde plans to move to the kingdom of Vitra. The blue-eyed girl asked if the girl was moving there against her will. But is this possible? The Lindgren house is one of the most famous houses of high society in the entire empire. Lydia does not think that the imperial palace will simply allow her to do something like this. High society aristocrats cannot move to other countries on principle, but they make exceptions for them because her father is marrying an aristocrat from Atri. Besides, he has many merits for the empire. At the moment, he has no heir, so the imperial palace approved their move. In any case, the girl will leave the imperial palace, and for now, she does not plan to live independently, so she decided that she would simply go with her father. The redhead sheepishly stated that she was sure that they would be able to meet again. She is an upper-class aristocrat, so she may go to the kingdom of Vitra to see Lydia once the competition to choose the empress is over. The concubine will be able to go there as a traveler, or even move there like her. It might take some time, but the blonde is sure that they will meet again, just like Odette said. Moreover, the kingdom of Vitra is not that far away. Therefore, there is no need to be too upset. It would be such a pity if Lydia's pretty face would darken the sadness throughout the entire tea party. The lady would tell the servant to make some more tea from the leaves she had brought. She hoped that the redhead would enjoy their last tea party to the fullest. She never thought that Lady Dahlia would leave so soon. This made the girl sad. But the lady thought that she would stay at least until the third round. She was her first friend in this place, besides Airy. All the concubine could think about when she left the castle and opened her shop in the capital, she never thought about starting over by moving to another place. If Viscount and Viscountess Odette were to move from the Heron Empire to another country, it would be like finding their daughter. Also, Mar will be safe because he won't have to worry about being captured as a hostage in a war. Moreover, the probability that the Heron Empire will start a war with the kingdom where the family of the most influential aristocrats of the empire has moved is too small. In fact, both countries are entering into an alliance through this marriage. And this means that the kingdom of Vitra will become the second safest country to live in after the empire. It didn't sound so bad, but would Mar want to leave the empire with the girl? Mar asked his assistant why he was so surprised to see him sitting in his office. The second round of concubine selection ended today, and the brunette just received the answers of those who managed to reach the third round. The concubines who solved the riddle the fastest were Eri, who used a candle, and Lydia, who used fruit. She used the fruit scent to get through the round. Surprisingly, there was enough fruit. The judges who were evaluating her spoke very highly of her. Attempts to win Eri's trust are going quite well. At this rate, sooner or later she would let her guard down. The guy apologized for not being able to bring evidence, but he almost got to the truth. He will definitely find out the secret behind the asters before the end of the third round. The green-eyed man just wanted to warn the blonde that he had pushed Eri to write a letter to the Therian household. However, Marquis's son Therian replied that he could not come to the Empire because he was still being watched. The remaining hostages from Dion and Arcade have become completely unruly. As for those who have surrendered, the man should kill them all so as not to deal with the consequences that they may lead to. Mar was ready to bet that Lydia would not like this. After all, she dreams of living peacefully and happily. Red-Eyed wanted to make her his empress and keep her in his palace forever, but at the same time, he knows what he should never do. Even the most luxurious vase cannot prevent the wilting of plucked and imprisoned flowers. He didn't even dare to dream of such a life, but Lydia's words seemed to save him. The man wanted to make her dreams come true. No, rather, Mar wanted to be a part of her dreams. He believes that one day he will have to give up the throne. The man was going to end the war as quickly as possible. And when the time comes, the throne of this empire will belong to a double. But only after the war is finally over. Therefore, it is imperative to complete the development of the aster extract as soon as possible. When everything is ready, the blonde will sell it to their elite agents, forcing them to influence Fairland. It will be enough to behead their leader to get rid of their sailors, because they are not part of the official army. It was decided to prepare a group of knights who will hide in ambush and immediately neutralize everyone when they fall into chaos. The man does not want to give the throne to an incompetent person. His task is to completely and unconditionally destroy those who have power in Fairland. If the brunette does everything as the emperor ordered him, then he will become a marquis for the rest of his life, as if he had been one from the very beginning. The man said that in exchange, he promised to prove to the blonde that he would make the ideal emperor. People will start saying that His Majesty has a soft spot for the princess, so she should be given second place, and then do as the guy sees fit. Why does the blonde care so much about this competition? If he wants to involve the Terrians in this, it would be wiser to give Eri second place. The assistant had managed to lull the princess's vigilance, so why not take the opportunity and let her see for herself that she would become empress? The emperor ordered that it should be ensured that she did not learn that she would be disposed of as soon as the marquis's son was imprisoned. The green-eyed man bowed, but was completely sure that it was he who would get rid of the emperor. The guy's behavior changed completely, which even scared Lydia. Judging by the way he uses those pompous words towards her when she is just a concubine of a lowly title, he must think that the lady has a chance to win the competition. He informed her that the things should arrive soon and asked if she needed anything else besides what she had requested. He had barely looked at the redhead during the first round, and now he wanted to please her so much. The results of the third round will be announced as soon as it is over, and when the winner is chosen, the coronation will take place on the same day. Therefore, each of the 7 candidates will receive the empress's dress. This is necessary so that everyone is ready for the coronation on the same day, because no one knows who will ultimately become empress. It will be strange to see all the candidates in the same coronation dresses when only one of them will become empress. The girl told Maru that she had once again taken second place. She didn't know how the third round would go, but at least she didn't have to worry anymore about being left without money and dying of hunger. In any case, you can't know anything for sure without seeing the results. Someone might have had a better idea than Lydia's, Lady Eri for example, would never have thought of using light. When Odette saw her friend off, she said that she really hoped for their next meeting. As she said, they will be able to meet again, and the Vitra kingdoms are not that far away. Dahlia asked if the lady was really going to address her so formally, and later asked to call her by her first name. The redhead nodded and promised that someday she would visit the kingdom of Vitra. Dahlia promised to give her friend a bunch of glass items, so she should come. The lady was about to leave, but asked to stop the carriage so she could give the girl a ring. It contains her seal, which she can use to find the blonde when she arrives in their kingdom. This ring was on her when they first met, so it is very different from the identity documents. Can she give her such valuable things? This gift shows that its owner belongs to the Lingren house, so the blue-eyed girl saw that it would help her if she showed it to others. The redhead was sure that Maru would like that country too. She had heard that the kingdom was famous for its desserts and beautiful dishes. But there are also many things in the Heron Empire. They don't have to go to another kingdom. But the girl didn't know because she wasn't outside the palace. She really thinks that the Vitra kingdom will be much more fun than the Heron Empire. Dahlia is so lucky that she will live in such a beautiful place. They should also move to the kingdom of Vitra later. Lydia thought about it and realized that it would be difficult for Odette's house to find her if she moved to another kingdom. And now that one of the features of the high aristocracy has moved into the kingdom, the chance that the emperor will declare war is too small. The blonde suddenly suggested that the girl go outside together. The man was sure that the lady would understand where she would be better off if she went outside. Getting through the crowd of palace guards would have been difficult, but the emperor had a plan. They changed their clothes, and the lady pretended that Lady Dahlia had left her seal with her. In that case, she was released from the palace to run for the carriage to give it to him. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't work, but the girl feels like she could save a lot of time and effort if she knew she could leave the palace this way. But most likely it was all because Mar simply didn't want to say goodbye to her. To this, the emperor said that they needed to hurry because they had little time. But there was nothing special about telling a friend that you liked him. Before, she couldn't understand what he was thinking, but now she could guess it was charming. There is a drawbridge near the front gate of the imperial palace, and to the south of the bridge are the houses of the aristocrats. The gate they just passed is in the very center and is used by important visitors to the imperial palace. Beyond the gates, there is a forest path leading directly to the business part of the capital. The blonde said that the Empire of Heron was better than Vitra. He insisted as if he himself was a resident of Heron. The girl asked the man why he needed glasses, but he thought it would be better to cover his face. It didn't look like the imperial palace was looking for Mar at all, and if His Majesty had ordered him to be kept locked up, the knights would have been looking for him long ago, but they hadn't seen them either. The blonde said that was all, because no one would be able to recognize him with glasses. His eyes, as he knows, not everyone likes them. Most likely everyone despises them, but the girl did not understand what was wrong with his eyes. The redhead took the glasses from him and said that no one thinks that way. At least he knows how beautiful his eyes are, like diamonds. Therefore, there is no need to wear glasses anymore. Otherwise, people will not be able to see the true beauty of a man. The friends decided to visit some fair. It was noisy and fun there. She thought that the city would have a different atmosphere because of the unfinished war that has lasted for so long. But all the people look happy. Maybe it's because they are in the capital. Although the war is suspended due to the peace treaty, it has been going on since the coronation of the last emperor. It will all end in one night. Perhaps the empire's long victories created such an atmosphere in the capital. Judging by how people use the emperor's nickname as an insult, in any case, due to the empire's long victories, it was the inhabitants who suffered the brunt. The empire seems to be doing well. But why not just end the war? Then the emperor's people will stop cursing him. After all, it was because of the endless war that he was called a tyrant. The girl tripped over her own skirt and began to fall, but someone caught her by the waist. It turned out to be Mar, who asked if the girl was okay. Come to think of it, this wasn't the first time he'd helped a lady keep from falling, and I wondered if he thought she was clumsy. People might think that the blonde man was carrying his concubine in his arms everywhere. Although it doesn't seem like it at all, the girl asked the guy to put her down on the ground. It seems like they will attract the attention of others if he continues to carry her like that. As it turns out, the heel of Lydia's shoe seemed to have broken when she fell. She thinks she will have to buy a new pair of shoes, but are there any shoe fairs around here? The blonde suggested looking around and finding where they could buy them, but for now, the servant would help the lady walk. Entering the shoe store, the lady said that she would just like to buy shoes, to which the seller said that they had come to the right place. While traveling, he had run out of money, so he began to sell his things. He would have gone home empty-handed if not for the girl. The redhead said that it was very cool because she just needed new shoes, realizing that the boy was in a difficult situation, and she was just looking for shoes. She definitely needed to buy them here. But suddenly, Mar said that he spoke to the girl like that with the broken shoes. Red-Eyed asked them to quickly buy shoes so that they could go, because the couple did not have much time left, and the concubine said that she really wanted to see the fireworks. Suddenly, the redhead instantly remembered that the fireworks would soon start. The emperor noticed that one of the beatniks was not from Heron at all. He said he was traveling, but he ran out of money, so the seller was selling his things, so Sir's from another country. It seems that His Majesty knows his boots well. He immediately recognized that these boots were not from Heron. They are all new, so there was no need to worry. The seller brought them as gifts, but was selling them because he needed money. There was no need to worry, because Lydia was buying the boots because she needed them now. Everything was fine, even if they were a little uncomfortable. The merchant assured the miss that all the shoes were of good quality, which turned out to be true. They were fine and more comfortable than the lady thought, and it looked like he hadn't ripped them off. The girl was overjoyed that the fireworks had not yet started, and they were not late. There were too many people here, and the redhead was wondering what to do about it. The blonde suggested that she find a quiet place without people. Mar was so eager to please the concubine that he found a place right on the tree. It was not worth admitting that it was much better to sit here. I wonder what Heron's fireworks would be like. The girl, as if in a dream, could not believe that she was really enjoying the festival and would soon be watching the fireworks. Everything was so fabulous. But the blonde asked if this meant that she liked Heron. The blue-eyed woman asked if the man was still worried about this, to which she replied that she liked Heron much more. She had a lot of wonderful memories with Mar here. She had never even been to Vitra. The redhead said that she would like to live with a man in a small village. But suddenly, when another firework exploded, the man briefly said that he liked the girl, to which she replied that she liked him too, and also liked watching fireworks with him. The redhead began to think about the guy who sold her the boots. She thought that she had never met a foreigner before. The emperor was not sure, as far as he knew, who the people were who wore such clothes. The lady would like time to stand still right now. These fireworks sound like fanfares wishing happiness to the bride and groom on their wedding day. The man tried to confess again, because the first time, the lady simply did not listen to him. He looked at her and said that he liked Lydia. Maybe that's why his words seem a little different, although they remain just friends. Although the girl knows that this is not what he means. Her mind refused to understand these words differently. But maybe it's normal, just for one day. After she and Mar returned from their walk, she realized that the third round she had forgotten about was just around the corner. The man asked the girl to have a snack while she rested, and he would go and clean the room. Last time he helped her with the room, and now she would like to help clean his room. They started packing their things to leave the palace before the third round started. After they packed her things, it was time to pack Mara's things. But he was so busy helping her that he hadn't even started getting ready yet. A girl couldn't be a bad housewife and force Mara to do everything for her. Suddenly, among her things, the lady found a scroll with information about the third round and thought that she had lost it, but it was here. Come to think of it, the third round of the concubine competition will start soon. Isn't this a scroll with the rules for the third round? The blue-eyed one doesn't need to read it, but she was still interested, and it would be strange if she didn't even know what she was running away from in the third round. And something that would resurrect the girl from death sounded familiar enough. The man here only has a bed and a closet, which is what he meant when he said he had a lot of things. Then, where did he put all his things? I mean the things he brought with him. So it's true that he doesn't need to help Lydia at all. He should have gone into his room earlier. In their house, the first thing to do is decorate his room. So the blonde didn't like it when there were a lot of things in the room, but you can't live like that in a new place. When they move, the first thing to do is decorate his room. So the lady asked him to think in advance what he would like to have in his new room. The concubine will receive a huge amount of compensation, so she will be able to buy him whatever she wants. If the third round goes well, will the girl be able to get more money? In the third round, it was written that something would save, something would kill, and something would resurrect from death. The girl suggested coming up with something similar to the second round. I mean, this problem reminded the lady of starflowers, but she wasn't going to take first place anyway. Maybe she should just find something that fits the criteria of the riddle. The lady asked the boy if the riddle reminded him of starflowers. Lydia is still not sure that she can both save and kill at the same moment, but it is the starflowers that die and are reborn. But the concubine cannot let others know about these flowers. After all, this is their precious ticket to a bright future. But what a pity. The redhead was sure that everyone would be stunned if they saw how the starflowers die and are reborn. She never said that she wanted to bring starflowers to the Sun Castle. Why was he so upset? Because he really cared so much about their business. Lydia told Maru that he had defended his jacket, and then asked him if he was sure he wasn't sick, to which he replied that he was fine. But what did the man mean? Odette just saw how the blonde turned pale. The emperor really needs to take care of himself, and not just his mistress. The lady noticed that some bottle had fallen out of the jacket. The man didn't seem to be sick, which was good, but I wondered what kind of bottle it was, to which Mar said that someone had given it to him. He was told it was a tonic drink. Come to think of it, Mar never told the lady about his friends and past. He and his friend must have been very close if he still had this gift. The girl said that she had seen this bottle before and knew that it was perfume from Fairland. But the blonde said that this man gave it to him in Genovia. The girl said that she saw the same bottle at Lady Aries. When the girl first met Aerie, she accidentally bumped into her, and she dropped this bottle of perfume in the hallway. The bottle was a little different, but it was similar to his. Such bottles had never been seen in Heron, so the lady remembered it. Perhaps Genovia and Fairland share some common culture, because Lydia isn't sure she's seen bottles with a similar design in Heron. So she thought that such bottles were only made in Fairland, but now, seeing the similarity of the two bottles, one might think that Genovia and Fairland are very close. When Odette said she thought the two countries were similar, he said they were not at all. Lydia reported that it looked like provisions had arrived. The girl decided to go and pick her up so they could talk later. The caterer stated that the lady looked lovely today, and they brought provisions and the formal dress they asked for. The things are quite heavy, so they can carry everything in quickly, but the lady said not to worry. She is a bit strange and prefers to carry all the things in herself. You just have to leave them at the door as usual. But the thing was, they brought an expensive formal dress this time, so they had to carry it in themselves. Perhaps Mar is in that room upstairs now. It's worth making sure that guests don't go near the room. The lady noticed pickled ginger among the provisions. She must make excellent tea from it. Finally they leave, and they are so easy to get angry. The girl was right, who sold her the boots a few days ago at the fair. So Lydia was a concubine. The seller suspected that she was an unusual woman, but he never thought that concubines could leave the castle. But she knows that the final round of the Empress's competition is about to begin. They were short of workers, so they needed new people. He looked devoted, so the man didn't expect him to leave the girl for even a minute. The brunette was happy to meet his customer, but he had some business to take care of, so he would leave her. He's probably too busy. It looks like the girl kept him too long. The lady seemed like a good person, so he wished her peace and prosperity for many years to come. When she entered Mara's room, she noticed that his closet was still not cleaned out. The concubine didn't understand where her friend had disappeared to. He had simply disappeared in the middle of packing his things. He also left the windows open. She is sure she told him to stop climbing through the windows. Lydia saw the energy drink that Maru's friend gave him. An order was received to take the 31st concubine into custody and lock her up in prison. If she resisted, she would be killed on the spot. So the guard advised her to cooperate if she wanted to live. The girl screamed that she couldn't believe it and asked them to talk to His Majesty. She didn't understand why the Emperor was doing this to Aerie. It didn't make any sense, because Lydia thought they were in love. The lady understood that she could not sit and watch silently, of course. This was no longer the story that the heroine knew. She understood that she could not sit and watch such an outcome of the plot. But even Aerie, the best candidate for the role of Empress and the favorite of the Emperor, was suddenly captured. So what can a helpless concubine like Aerie do? Lydia was angry at her own hopelessness, as if she had returned to where she had been 3 years ago, when she could do nothing. The concubine needs to return to Lilia's castle. Maybe Mar has already returned. Seeing Mara, the girl asked where he had been, and if everything was okay, she said that it was the bottle that she had, and then changed the subject to Lady Aerie. The man told about the uprising in Fairland. So the blonde needs to go there. She couldn't understand why, because it was somehow connected with Genovia. The redhead asked him not to go anywhere, because there were many people in Genovia besides him. The Emperor hugged the girl and said that it would not take long. The lady begged the man not to go anywhere because she was afraid to be alone. The red-eyed man wiped away someone else's tears with his finger and asked to give him 3 days to wait for him. The servant gave Lydia some object and said that by looking at it, she could remember him. It was the royal seal, which had his blood in it, so a part of him, if you keep it, the man will return in 3 days. Mar said that he would come back, so the girl believes in him. First, she needed to pack the redhead's things. Mar might return earlier than he said, since he was from Genovia. It was not safe for him to stay here. She would prepare all the things so that they could leave the castle as soon as he returned. Some clothes, some starflowers that the concubine had collected, the signet ring that Dahlia had given him, and the ring that Mar had given her. The redhead made a pendant out of it so she wouldn't lose it. She wants to sleep so much. Maybe it's because it's very late. It was impossible to sleep. She needs to finish packing. But suddenly, Aerie woke the girl up, asking her to get up quickly. The redhead asked how the pink-haired girl got here and how they let her go. It didn't matter because the lady needed to leave right now. Because of her, she could be in danger, and Aerie won't let that happen. Blue Eyes looked at Lydia and asked her to run away with her to Fairland. She did not understand what the concubine meant, what happened between her and His Majesty, because he believes that Fairland started the rebellion. Odette said she didn't know how to help, but she would try her best. The lady said that His Majesty was ruthless and knew no mercy, and they should escape before he found out about everything. If the princess remains in Harran, they might execute her. The girl returns back to Fairland to fight against the Harran Empire. The princess offered to run away with her, because if she stayed here, she would also be drawn into the war. The ruthless emperor will remember what happened at the ball and use their friendship against them. Lydia doesn't remember all the details, but she will still remember the main storyline. Even if we put aside the competition to choose the empress, she could at least understand if the development of the novel was slower, but the uprising completely changes the plot of the novel. This meant that the whole story would end in complete disaster. They had little time, so they had to hurry, but Odette couldn't escape. Red can't leave yet. They are, of course, good friends, but she is from Harran and has no connection with Fairland, so she didn't think that His Majesty would immediately switch to her. Her escort had to leave urgently to take care of some business. He promised to return in 3 days, so the girl cannot leave until then. Aerie said that if he left the palace, then most likely he will not be able to return. As soon as the war begins, the security will be strengthened. The concubine's escort will not be allowed back. The lady felt sorry. He was really important to her, and she couldn't just leave him like that. And she can't leave her here all alone. Aerie will help find her escort, so it's still worth going with her. Perhaps it will be safer to meet him outside the Imperial Palace. In fact, maybe Aerie is right. It's probably dangerous to wait for Mara in the Imperial Palace. Lydia heard that Mara was heading to Genovia, since that's where he was from. But suddenly, the Emperor appeared from behind, who declared that he himself could find him. Princessa said that everything was fine and he could be trusted, so just rely on her and go with them. Outside the castle stood a shoe seller who was waiting for His Majesty. He was in the same carriage with this tyrant emperor. He had to be careful not to upset him, otherwise it would be bad. The lady heard the clanking of armor. There were Imperial guards outside. They are about to leave the Imperial Palace through the main gate where the guards are standing. They were not informed that a carriage would be leaving at this time, to which the writer stated that it was confidential, so he was told to be as careful as possible. He said that he was not warned. Judging by their clothes, they were from the Palace of the Sun. Lydia thought that the Emperor should have dealt with this from the very beginning. But suddenly, the Emperor asked if he really needed permission to leave his own palace. They ordered the gates to be opened. If life is dear, it is better for her to remain silent about this, even in her grave. Aerie guessed that Lady Lydia was very scared. The lady asked forgiveness for the late greeting of His Majesty. She forgot to greet him because she was completely confused, and now she's afraid that she made him angry. But the princess only asked the lady not to do it again. The man said he wanted to apologize for doing it later, but he wanted to introduce himself properly. The brunette removed his veil and said that his name was James Genovia, and he was the last member of the royal family of the Kingdom of Genovia. He said that he was not the real emperor of the Harran Empire. He only played this role due to certain circumstances. It was impossible. He attended the welcoming ball, met with Aerie in secret, and was at the competition to select the empress. Although, if you remember, he treated her with respect and did not at all look like a tyrant. It was hard to believe, but it was the real truth. The princess said that he was telling the truth. She also knew that he was not the real emperor. This was only to hide the fact that he was not the real emperor, since they did not know at what moment he might be watching them. It makes sense that she was simply afraid of the emperor's attention, of course, but they definitely reach for the stars in the novel, even if the plot has recently begun to deviate a little from the original. In the beginning, the story was exactly as Lydia remembered. So, when could the substitution of the emperor have occurred if during the meeting with Aerie it was no longer he? How could his double say the same words as the real emperor in the book? The girl, of course, only caught part of the conversation, but still. The lady decided to inquire how long His Highness had been living as his double. To this, he stated that he had been pretending to be emperor for 8 years already. But she woke up in this novel 3 years ago. This means that the Emperor of Harran was already Jamie when she found herself in Lydia's body and entered the Imperial Palace. She could not believe it. So the novel she was reading was indeed about James and Aerie. Then, she wanted to ask about the secret meeting at the Tulip Palace. It was right after the lady found out that he was the Emperor's double that he asked if the princess could help him achieve independence for the enemy country. She had suspicions that the Emperor had a double, but she did not expect that he would come to her with such a proposal. Aerie explained that Lydia had gotten it all wrong because they were both devoted to their countries and didn't even have time to think about dating. They are getting further and further away from a happy ending. All she has to do is complete the final round and marry the Emperor. The Emperor of the Heronian Empire, the tyrant who is supposed to be the protagonist of the novel, not his double. Where is he, and what is he doing while James is busy with the main role? He is the kind of man who would rather rush into battle to conquer a continent than sit on the throne, so he handed over all his affairs to a double, and for the last 8 years, he himself has concentrated on his campaigns. The Emperor is a naturally ruthless man, and he returned to the battlefield to trample Fairland, which was just beginning to recover. So what is James going to do now? He shouldn't be here. If anyone found out that the doppelganger had escaped, it would be terrible, but there was no need to worry about it. He was considered the Emperor now. They just decided that he was a little capricious because he decided to free Princess Aerie. It all happened so suddenly that he left the Imperial Palace with only a small group of elite soldiers, so the Emperor probably doesn't yet know that he has betrayed him. Luckily, the man managed to get hold of some secret military information and pass it on to Marquis Therion before they left. Once it reached Fairland and Genovia, they would be able to slow down the advance of the Heronian army and buy them some time. The girl said they sent a message by carrier pigeon, so she was sure the front line would be established soon. If they got there quickly, everything should be fine. The brunette stated that if only that plan had worked and he had become emperor, making Aerie his empress, they could have stopped all of this much faster. The princess said that if he had not risked his life to contact this, Fairland would not have stood a chance against Heron. They only got this far because he told her everything, so Aerie is grateful to her for that. The girl asked, just to check, whether it was Marquis Therion who was now sitting in the coachman's seat. War is coming, and there will be no safe place left on the continent. They would like Lydia to go with them to Fairland, so he asks in advance if she agrees. Odette had tried so hard to prevent this continental war, and here she was, in the thick of it. Lydia didn't even feel afraid. It just all seemed so ridiculous, but everything would be fine as long as she was with them. The redhead said that she would be